Hello, Sean.
Hey, Michael.
All right then. Are you in Texas or?
No, I am not. I am in California. I do have a few friends who are in Texas, but no, I moved away from there many years ago. I was close. I was in Oklahoma.
All right.
It was just above Texas, but
I was watching 90 Day Fiance, so that's Big Mike. He's from Oklahoma, wasn't he, or something, wasn't she? Or the mother was.
All right, let's see if we can get the stream going here.
On the micro expander,
Yeah.
are there little pins on the up or the down for jumper 1 and jumper 2s?
I don't know. You might ask Mac that. I'm not the sharpest on the micro, but on the mini I could tell you because there are none. All right, where is that?
Hopefully my microphone works this time.
Not particularly well.
What's wrong with it? Is it giving me a weird Scottish accent?
It's a little not feedback. It's a little gruff.
Oh, right.
A little ragged. It sounds a little like you spent too much on an Aquarius 2 and not enough on your microphone.
That's absolutely true.
All right, we are in Aquarius Group. We are in this event. Let's hope we don't get feedback. Join the event. Oh, it does make you sign in. Interesting. Oh, well. Good. Well, I guess it passes you on through if they want to register for it. So at least it'll be the three of us.
Yeah, that's it.
Kind of like last time,
Oh.
except missing Mac.
Is
No,
Mac joining?
A few more.
Is Mac joining? He is coming along, is he?
Yeah, he said he was. He wants to show off his new creation.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. Quite a bit of new interest in the platform, which is always great.
It seems to have taken a spike. I can only assume it's because of all the work that everybody's been doing to promote the platform, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. We've got about 5 till we'll let some folks join. I don't really have an agenda, Roy, so
Cool.
whenever I run out of steam and whenever there's a gap, I'll talk about your newest creation and newest creations, both of them, because I think the 10 line is just as important as the commercial release. So
Yeah, I think so. It's it gets the mind going. It's much harder to do the 10 liner, to be honest, I think.
well, yeah, and we're at a bit of a disadvantage because we have a few less characters than a lot of other platforms do.
Yeah, they need to do a pure 72 character, pure 72 section just for us.
Yeah. Not that we get any additional credit for it, but yeah.
No, we don't, and it's quite a lot when you think about it. That's 80 characters less we have to play with, which is quite significant, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course the only what's the word I'm looking for? The only shortened command you can use is a question mark for the print statement. Everything else is longhand.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Jay.
Jay, you keep getting younger every time I see you.
Well, I'm flattered. Thank you.
You started off as a 30-year-old man. Now you look like you're 16 or 17.
What filters that?
Oh, I've actually been working to lose a little weight during the lockdown, so
good for you.
Yeah,
I have not.
It's tough. It's tough no matter when you try.
Yeah. Well, my daughter's going to be married, ideally, around Labor Day, so hopefully I will lose a little of this by then. It should be easy.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
My brother just got married Valentine's Day, in fact.
Ah, that was my birthday.
Mm.
I haven't had a legitimate birthday since I was married. It's all about her. I'm kidding. No, I love taking the attention away from me and focusing on other people. So my son got a job at Blizzard Entertainment, and they are finishing up their what would normally be an in-person Blizzard convention. So he's working on a couple of their properties. He's working on Overwatch 2, which is supposedly due out soon, I hope. So he's very excited about that. And we've got Martin with us. This is a rare treat.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Martin.
Yeah.
Hello.
There's Mac. So I don't know if everybody can see, we are streaming live on Facebook. I thought that they could just sign in, but they do have to register for it as well too. But if all else fails, they can just watch it as what's his name does over a slow boat from China, YouTube. I will dump this to YouTube eventually. So. A new person, Nick Sherbina. Yeah, I think that's right.
Hi, chaps.
Hello,
Hello,
my name is Nick Sherbina. I'm from Ukraine.
Hey, Nick, good to have you.
Thanks. I'm fine. Setting up my. Okay.
Looks like we're about 1 minute till the top of the hour. We'll give a few more folks a couple minutes, probably about 5 after, to get through the registration process for those who didn't do it. I thought that it was just a watch sort of a thing on Facebook Live, but it's not. They still have to register as well too. So the good news is they'll be able to interact with us if they so choose. If not, as I said before, they can just watch it on YouTube when I finally upload it. So. Jay, do you use Zoom for your virtual sessions at school, or what do you guys use?
Well, my university is a Microsoft shop, so we tend to use Teams more often than Zoom, but I've used both.
Yeah, we're at work. We're a Microsoft shop as well too, but at Cal Lutheran, they give us
Pros and cons with Teams, I think.
yeah.
Sure.
It's
Yeah,
it's
I agree
weird.
with
My microphone will tend to go in and out. And it's ironic because it's a Microsoft microphone. So
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I just like to use Teams on my Linux laptop just because.
just because you can. Well, hopefully Mac will get an Aquarius version of Zoom working.
Wow, I'd love to see that. That'd be awesome.
It'll
Hey,
do it.
anything's possible.
It'll
I know,
render it in
yeah.
ASCII art. Of course, he's got to have an ARM coprocessor to process the graphics.
That's it. A Raspberry
We'll
Pi
type it.
bolted onto the side.
Stranger things have happened.
know.
I put a Pi inside a Commodore 64 as a keyboard wedge, so I could
Yeah.
be able to use keyboard strokes when I developed the NTSC VIC switcher for the C64. That's just what I use because it was easiest, and it behaves nicely. It doesn't as long as you put diodes in.
I've just added one to my Amiga last week.
Yeah, I would like to see if that's practical for the Aquarius. Nick, Mac has got some other stuff. Feels a little bit like cheating, but
yeah. I mean, I've got a Pi in my in Roy's favorite machine that I own.
Here we go.
The data center.
Are you using that as a tube?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's as a co-pro. It does the
Yeah.
it's in the BBCB. It does 6502 emulation, Z80 emulation,
Yeah, brilliant.
68,000 emulation, ARM emulation, and then the full ARM, full speed.
Yeah.
And what have you. So it was in there when I bought it. So
yeah, fair enough. There's lots of interesting things coming out with Pis. I mean, I've probably got about a dozen of them myself, but I do like the Pi Zero. It is quite it's small enough to hide in things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, and certainly the new one is
yeah, Pico. I've just got one of those as well. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah, Ben Heck's been talking a lot about that.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's tiny. I'll where's mine? I've got it somewhere.
Yeah, it's about 3/4 that size.
It is a tiny wee thing.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's almost getting to the point now where this stuff's getting that small that things like these are essential.
Yeah.
That'll be my next purchase, I think.
For this,
The little microscope thing with the
microscope. Yeah, it's like.
Is that a microscope with a
my
monitor
right
on
hand.
it?
What's
that?
that?
A microscope with a monitor on it.
Yeah, it's very handy.
Wow.
It helped out when I was trying to figure out what that Toco was in the upper right-hand corner of the board.
Yeah, you can get them.
I still haven't.
Banggood and stuff. They're basically like a little CCD camera, and then like a little tablet, little TFT tablet that you can use, and they'll do like 1,000 times plus or something, won't they?
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and you can get in very close. It's got an SD card slot, so if you want to save it to that. I don't really do that much close. I'd much rather have the iPhone above my workbench when I'm doing builds, which hopefully I will soon. Hopefully I'll be putting together another couple of things. Where are we at? 7:04. I think we're good. Looks like Matt Pills.
Yeah, looks like Matt's trying to join.
Yeah. Looks like we got Matt. He's trying to get his audio working. I'm going to go mostly full screen.
Hey, y'all.
You all right, Mike?
Hey.
Got the t-shirt.
Aquarius Draw hero. All right, we'll call it 7:04. Welcome everybody to, I think this is the third quarterly Aquarius Users Group meeting. For those who weren't able to join us, hopefully you'll enjoy this on YouTube. TJ Ferrer, who undoubtedly downloaded at 6 KB per second over the next 2 months, will enjoy this.
The first one.
Exactly, and that's the fast connection.
Well, at least he's got a connection now that means he can't download it faster than he can watch it.
Yeah,
like
exactly. At least it's. So we'll be, the next one, we'll try to have these every 3 months. The next one will be our, gosh, our first annual, fourth one? No, not quite. When we come back around to the 5th one, it will be our first annual. So doesn't matter, it's been fun. So I'm Sean Harrington. Let's kind of go around. I'll call people out because who knows who's where on everybody's screen. Michael Thornton, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got in the hobby.
I think I bought a computer with my mum and dad, I think back in Debenhams in England, in the, it might have been 82 or something like that, so about £49. So I've had them on the go, and then I've got about 4, I think, Aquariuses. So.
Yeah. Mr.
Quite a bit
Templeman.
with the micro expander cartridges, but probably no disc at the moment now.
Cool. They breed. Be
Hope
warned.
so.
Got to store them separately, otherwise they breed, mate. That's the.
Yes.
I know, that's it.
Oh goodness.
Wow.
That's
There you
damn
go.
near
I
hoarder
told you.
status. Yeah.
No, that's worse than a tribble.
I'm saying nothing.
That's why I've got my camera in a corner. All you can see is a white corner.
Yeah.
Not falling for that.
Mr. Templeman.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Roy Templeman. I'm a Scotsman, but I live in England at the minute with my missus and my 3 kids. I first got my Aquarius when I was 10. So it's a story I've told the other guys before, but at the time I was after a Spectrum. I said to mum and dad for my Christmas I wanted a ZX Spectrum, a Sinclair Spectrum, and at that point obviously the ZX81 had been out for a while as well, so I said to mum and dad, I realise the Spectrum's quite an expensive computer because it's not long out, so I would settle for a ZX81. I'd be happy with a ZX81. Anyway, my dad went off to the local electronics store in my wee town where I grew up, and basically the salesman saw him coming. So it was right on the cusp of when the Aquarius was in that sort of 4-month must get rid of it period. I think they were selling it off for $49.99, and so when my dad went up to the salesman and said, you know, my son was looking for a ZX81, the salesman said, no, you don't want to buy him a ZX81 because a ZX81 is black and white, it has no sound, and it's only got 1K of RAM. What you need is this. And he brings out the box with an Aquarius and says, this has got 4 times the memory and sound and color. You know, so Dad did the right thing and bought an Aquarius, which was sitting under the tree for a 10-year-old Roy. But unlike some of our European colleagues, here in the UK, certainly in Scotland, you couldn't buy it as a kit. So you didn't have the big bundle box with the micro expander and the cassette deck and all that. You literally just got the Aquarius in one game and the discs. And so, you know, playing that since I was 10, that's what's that? It's a 38-year play window. I've got pretty good at Tron Deadly discs. Although not with the controllers, you know, not with because they're horrendous. But over the years, I've been a collector, a retro collector for over 20 years now. I've got about just over 100 machines in my collection. Obviously, they're not all Aquarius machines. I've got a soft spot for the Aquarius because it's my first machine. But I try and collect unique oddballs. So the machines that were laughed at, the machines that were poor spec, they're my favorites. And obviously the Aquarius falls neatly into that. I'll talk about my latest Aquarius acquisition later on. Some of the guys know what it was I spent a stupid amount of money on earlier in the year.
You need to update your hat.
And we'll come on to that earlier. But yeah, so in my free time, so I work in IT, but in my free time, I try and write some games for the Aquarius. I've got a couple of games out there. I'll talk about that later as well. And yeah, I just love the Aquarius because it's one of those little machines that everybody saw it as a bit of a joke and a bit of a toy at the time. And I genuinely think there is so much we can do with it. And you guys are all testament to this little blue keyed machine. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Well, thank you very much. Martin, tell us a little bit about you. We know your site, but we don't know much about you.
Hi, I am Martin van der Steenhoven. Sorry, I do not have a camera, but I'm here. Same story, a bit like Roy. I was also saving up for a ZX Spectrum, but then the Aquarius came into the shop when I was about 16 years old, and I bought an Aquarius computer instead. Played around with it. It was also my first computer, and now I'm collecting Aquarius stuff, but my collection only is uniquely for the Aquarius computer. I do not collect other computers. I saw some other collectors and they go crazy with all kind of computer stuff. So that's why I keep my collection only to the Aquarius computer. That's it.
I saw that, Sean. Martin doesn't have a camera, so he can't reply in a similar vein. But
that's right. Good. Next up, let's talk to Greg McGill.
Hey guys. So I collect every kind of computer, and I of course have a couple of Aquariuses. In fact, recently I discovered that one of mine has a messed up connector for the expansion. So by getting a mini expander, it didn't work. So tried another one, it worked just fine. So I always wanted one when I was a teenager. I was trying to figure out what computer to get, and then I got a TI instead of an Aquarius. But so as soon as I had an opportunity to pick one up, I picked one up, and then another one, and then another. So there you go.
I think you're quite unique when you said you wanted one. Certainly at the time, from everything I remember, nobody wanted an Aquarius. In fact, it was seen as it was seen as punishment.
Yeah. I wanted any computer at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Nick, you're new to the video feed. Let's hear from you.
Well, I am from Ukraine, and I have more than 100 computers in my collection. Maybe obviously Aquarius, I met Aquarius about 5 years ago for first time, because in the former Soviet Union, Ukraine was a part of Soviet Union. There were absolutely different machines for that side of Iron Curtain, and we had ZX Spectrum clones. By the way, the first ZX Spectrum clone in former USSR was developed here in Lviv, Ukraine. But then when I started collecting computers, eventually I found a Metal Aquarius on our local eBay equivalent and bought it. Because I like it how it looks, these good keys, you know, white, nice white machine, small. And then I bought 32K memory expander. No, actually, first I bought that micro expander thing, and then I bought a memory cartridge, 32K, and then I bought flash cartridge. What is it name? You know, Aquarius card. Yeah. So now it is more or less complete system with without maybe a tape recorder and printer, but who knows, maybe I will find these pieces later. And now I'm running the joint project with our Ivan Franko University in Lviv, the Museum of Computer Technology. I will donate my collection, and there is about 300 square meters area, room for the museum, but we need money to repair it, because this actually nightmare how it looks today. And also, I participated several times in basic 10-liner contests, and in 2K19 and this year. And in both cases, I picked Metal Aquarius as a platform for Poor 80 category. And because actually we have a more restricted thing, 72 characters per line. Aquarius just doesn't allow to type more. And that first game was Pixel Attack, and this year's submission is Escape. It is a load runner-like game, so we'll see. Well, that's all for now.
It's a very hard game, I'll tell you that. I've not managed to beat it yet.
Very hard, isn't it? It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's an excellent game, but it's bloody difficult. Yeah.
Well, it shows.
But I won it once, or maybe 2 times, so it is possible. I know.
Good. No
without
cheat
any
codes.
cheating. Without cheating.
There's no room for cheat codes. Yeah.
No characters
All right.
left.
Matt Pills, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm brand new to this. I think it was in November that I was on Reddit and posted something, where I said back in the day, people actually had to download their code by transcribing it from a magazine. And someone had commented that they were working on the rock, paper, scissors game for Aquarius. And I'm like, well, I remembered I had an Aquarius that I picked up at a thrift store back in the 90s and had nothing with it. And it went to storage bin and I forgot all about it. And then I thought, well, it would be interesting to kind of get back into this. And so I managed to pick up a compact, the complete set system at some point, and then just kind of went from there. So I grew up with, we were kind of behind the times, I guess. And I was the youngest kid by 6 years in the family, but we wound up, first we got a color computer from a garage sale 10 years after it was kind of past its lifespan, I guess. And then we got a Commodore, and then these little home TV hookup computers. So it's just always been my kind of enjoyment as a hobby. Professionally, I'm a programmer, web developer type thing. So I just kind of, I have a small, I have I guess a fair collection, but I'm also, I like what I have to be usable, and I'm out of space at this point. So, so I've just kind of been enjoying getting familiar with Aquarius and getting to know everyone.
Cool, thank you. Jay Snellen, tell us about yourself.
All right, well, I'm Jay Snellen, and unlike many of you, I did not have an Aquarius back in the day. I was primarily an Atari and TI computer user, and still am. I saw one in Aquarius, that is, at about 1989 or 90, but I didn't get one until years later when I had gotten into the Intellivision and was expanding my collection into the other Mattel systems. And at the time I got my Aquarius, I wanted to get more software for it, but I found at the time, this would have been in early 2010, that a lot of the software was very difficult to get a hold of and very expensive. So I decided to make my own copies just to be able to experience them on the real hardware. And around the same time, I was looking for an opportunity to get more experience with hardware design. So the project of creating a multi-cart for the Aquarius was a very nice way of serving both of those goals. And that kept me busy for a couple of months, and it culminated in the AquariCart, which I released in, I think, mid-2011. I have a sample running here on the screen behind me. So that's coming up on 10 years old already. Hard to believe. I need to do a refresh of the code for the anniversary, I think. But and so I've gotten into the Aquarius. I've started a few other projects. Haven't had the chance to follow through on them because I've been sidelined by other things, starting full time as a teacher, etc. But one of the things that interests me about the Aquarius is that it is such a, I mean, it's a very nice looking machine and it's fun to play with, but it's such a minimal, clean design that from an educator's point of view, it seems to me to be a very nice way of introducing students to the fundamentals of computer science and hardware design, which is getting more and more difficult to get into. I mean, you have single board computers nowadays like the Raspberry Pi and the Arduino, but a lot of those are designed to sort of shield you from the inner workings of what's actually going on in the machine. You can get something up and running without really understanding what it is that you did to get it working or why, because there's so many resources out there for you. Whereas with a system like the Aquarius, you get very close to the inner workings of the hardware, which has been one of the fun aspects of learning about it. So I'm very interested in exploring the Aquarius more from that angle, and of course creating hardware, software, other resources. And I've got a few projects in the works now, and I hope to show a few of those during this meeting today. But basically, that's my story.
Awesome. Okay. And last but not least, Mac Wharton.
Hi, chaps. I guess quite a few of you know me from the previous meets, but as far as the Aquarius goes, I was very much in that ilk of back in 1980X, wanting a computer for the first time, and sort of for Christmas, seems the mum and dad bought it from one of the catalogues, which I don't know if that was a big thing in other parts of the world, but in the UK there was all the catalogues where you could buy something and then pay it off over 25 years at 20 pence a week or something. And so I got an Aquarius for Christmas, and sort of it's where it was my first computer, and I still have a very, very soft spot for it, because it is, as Jay said, it is such a lovely machine for getting close to the hardware that other machines don't do, which is, you know, sort of a bit of a shame for other machines, but it is great. I learned Z80 assembly because of it, and you know, sort of there's been probably a few things you might have seen in the forum that I've posted, like the Christmas demo that I did, that sort of showed that actually the machine can do quite a lot more than it was ever tasked with doing. You know, and I think we can probably, you know, sort of, even the base machine now can probably still do a hell of a lot more than anything it ever did. But I remember reading that, wasn't it the Intellivision programmers felt they'd done something wrong if they got assigned to an Aquarius game?
Yeah, it was like the Gulag.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was punishment, wasn't it?
Yeah, but you know, sort of, I do think there's still a hell of a lot of potential for the machine. And, you know, obviously between myself and Sean, we've been working on all sorts of bits and bobs, which, you know, will eventually come to fruition. So yeah, it's a little bit about me. There you go.
Thank you. And having just joined us, Dave Roper, you want to give us a little intro about who you are and how you got into the hobby?
You're on mute, mate.
Looks like we lost him. Maybe he'll come back afterward.
Yeah.
Well, he's into retro computers, so he may be on a old Macintosh SE or something like that.
Yeah, I think I've spoken to him a couple of times recently, because he's working on building up one of the boards.
Right.
So yeah, I think he's been chatting to him quite a bit about some of the caveats and things like that. So
sure. Well, until he gets back, I'll go ahead and do a brief intro, because I've done it every single time before. I was pretty much the same. In winter of 1984, I had just started working. I was 16 years old, worked at a movie theater. And my birthday, as I mentioned before, is around Valentine's Day. So that's about when the Aquarius bundles were available at KB Toys, which is a chain that we had here in the States in most malls. And they put all their junk stuff out at the front on the table, you know, just, I can't remember, it was, you know, $99.99 or $79.99. It progressively got less and less. And the Aquarius in particular wasn't selling, so it started out at maybe 110, and then by the time I got it, it was probably around 69, which is about what I could afford. A couple weeks worth of savings. I'd always done programming when I was a kid, but for me, programming was actually typing it out on a typewriter from books that I checked out at the library. I tried to get into programming at my school, which was an old UNIVAC-based system, but they would have none of me in there because I didn't like to play by their rules. So anyway, so I had the Aquarius, used it for a couple of years, got to understand BASIC more intimately, as limited as it was on the Aquarius. And then, of course, like others, got myself a Commodore 64, and the Aquarius became less attractive. That 64 turned into a Macintosh SE, that SE turned into a Color Mac, and then I eventually jumped into Windows around the time Windows 98 or so came out. So like a lot of people, I progressed through my technology and never really thought much about it. It was always kind of mystifying to me, even though I enjoyed programming. And it wasn't until I got into more deeply into electronics that I started to appreciate the old systems. So I thought I got to get back to the Aquarius since it was my first computer. So 2019, I think, was when I first started to get those back in. And I remember the things that bothered me still kind of plague us today. It's hard to find the connector box and the RF modulator switch box. So one of the first things I wanted to make sure I took care of was having some sort of a composite AV out. So I developed one of those. It's pretty simple design. You could actually look it up on the internet. It's very similar to the one the Intellivision uses. In fact, it's just a little amplifier for the circuit with 75 ohm termination. And then I decided to take on the big task of reverse engineering the whole motherboard so that we would have not only a replacement, not that anybody ever breaks a motherboard in half or that an Aquarius motherboard ever gets damaged particularly badly. But I thought it was a good kind of starting point. So if people like Mac or Jay or anybody wanted to start mucking about and not worry about damaging original hardware, which a lot of people appreciate, a lot of the collectors that are on the line here, I wanted to have something that people could feel good about soldering to or cutting traces on without messing things up. So we developed the board, and this is the Rev C of it. For those who haven't been paying attention, this is open source. You can go to the GitHub. It's pretty easy to find. If you go to github.com, you can find the Gerbers, the schematic, and the board files in Eagle. I love KiCad, but I kind of have to pick one tool to work with. So the schematics are there, and I'm sure if anybody knows how to decipher them, they could create their own boards if they want to. There are educational versions of, I should say there are inexpensive, because the educational version of Eagle isn't particularly inexpensive, but it's less than it would be for a full thing. So those boards are out there.
Just say the free version of Eagle doesn't actually allow you to do boards over a certain size, sadly.
Right.
And even if you pay for the cheaper version, you still can't do the Aquarius board because it's too big.
Yeah, sorry about that. It is what it is, yeah. So I would welcome, if anybody wanted to take the time to do a KiCad version, which is free, that would be fantastic. I would have no problem for that. It is in the public domain, so do with it as you will. Also did the same thing for the the mini expander. Mini expander didn't necessarily make its way to Europe and the UK as much as it did in the States, because the States got the bundled version from the Mattel excess inventory. Along with that, you typically will get the control pads, and those are fairly expensive and difficult to find. So I did develop a prototype, which is also freely available for the joy connectors. If anybody wants to do those with switches and diodes, I do have a starting point for that. It's for slightly larger hands. That's mainly because the switches and diodes that I used are through hole versus surface mount. But the mini expander Eagle files are also online and open source. One of the things that Mac's been working on, which he'll show you in a little bit, is a bare version of this board. And The revision that's currently out there, this is not that version, this is version A. We have a version C that's now out there that you can order. You can either get the Gerbers yourself and download them, or you can go to PCBWay. I don't necessarily support PCBWay. I think they're a little more flashy and a little more expensive, and I have no need for ad revenue from them, so I don't really promote them that much. But they do have a project sharing forum, and both the motherboard and the mini expander are available to order directly from them if you want to do so. I think a minimum order is 5. I know with shipping to the States, that's about $70, and that's not cheap, but maybe if you go in with some other folks, you could, get 5 boards and split the cost among you guys. For me to do those, they would probably have to sell for about $25 US a piece minimum. I have no problem doing that, but I don't really want to be in the circuit board business. It's not really why I want to do that. So those are out there and available. Rev C, as I was alluding to, now actually takes this little kind of set of headers, and over here that Mattel and Radifin had put on the boards, and turns this into a proper 20-pin header like is on the micro expander. So if you didn't want to just use these ports, you could use the same 2x10 header that the micro expander uses. So that's been put there. I also took my Mac's markings and actually put them on the silk screen for this upper one. So if you don't want to use an actual cartridge slot and you want to use a pin header, a set of pin headers will fit in there just fine, and you can use it as a breakout board. So it's a great starting point since it's already got its connection to the expansion bus and the buffers. You've got a great example on how you can start expanding if you're into hardware hacking, how you can start playing with the expansion bus yourself. Now, for those of you who are watching, this expansion bus is not GPIO, so don't think this is going to be like your Arduino or your Raspberry Pi. These are not GPIO pins. These are direct connections to the expansion bus, which attaches to both the data bus and the
although 2x10 is.
Yes, so but the expansion that goes into the AY chip, the AY, because James will get on me if I don't say this properly, the AY3 8910 chip, or the modern clone versions of it, which for me, I don't really care about the sound differences. Those are GPIO pins, and they can be set for either input or output. They basically connect to the same pins that the serial ports do, or the Atari style joystick, the DIN 9s. So you could use some GPIO stuff. Now, you do have to choose whether the bank that you want to use is input or output. It's all or nothing on that bank. But you could set 5 for in, 5 for out, and no, 8 for in, 8 for out. That's right. And you could do some basic GPIO stuff just like you could on an Arduino, or on an Arduino, or even though it's at a slightly different voltage level at a Raspberry Pi. So, Mac last time got to show off his version of the first functioning new motherboard. Here's mine. And I'd love to say it's perfectly functioning, but I do have a little bit of color ripping, so I've got to figure out which of these little bits I didn't get right. Also, my keyboards are messing up, so I think my keyboard chip probably needs to be either reseated or something, but this basically works. Notice that I bypassed all of the power stuff. In the next revision of the board that I'm working on, most of the power stuff will be gone. Now the one that I'm working on won't be an open source one. It's going to take most of the large through-hole components and turn them into SMD, which right off the bat puts it out of a lot of people's reach. But it will put a lot of the core components on the motherboard and make room for some other stuff. I also want to try to reuse the ports on the back in different ways. As much as I love this big clunky cassette connector and this dumb one-directional serial port for the printer, those could be used for other things and without messing up the plastic on the Aquarius. It makes sense that this would be the AV out, because it's the same form factor. Something bigger like this could be used for a much more useful RGB composite DIN using like one of the Sega round pins or something like that, that can go to a SCART breakout that's wildly available. Also, UK folks and PAL folks don't really use the little switch here. Most of those holes are fairly useless. It just happens to be the exact right size for a USB micro port, and you can fit it in. So this will be my input port, 5 volts only. I will have a single power up chip that'll bring up 12 plus 12 volts. So the TEA chip, which is the video chip on the Aquarius, can power this whole board without all of this other power management stuff. The serial port for the printer is a little bit different because it requires both positive and negative 12 volts. We're thinking that we'll probably work around that using a MAX 232 chip. Is that what it is, Mac? Yeah. It has an onboard power up. It can manage the up and the low power easily. So we'll try to change that out for a bi-directional serial port. But where would that come from? Well, that's a great idea. We've got a couple of ports here. If we're doing video out of these 2 ports and doing power in, then what was the RF out becomes available, and it's a nice 10mm hole, as is the power cord port. So those are 2 very useful ports. We could put a serial port on one. We could put a power switch on the other. So a little push on and off button that's right there. Then that means that the power switch opening is available. And it just happens to be the right size for maybe a micro SD, maybe a USB port, I don't know. So that's one way we were thinking about reusing the ports on the Aquarius. Let's see, a couple of other things. While I can miniaturize most of the small components on the board, I can't really miniaturize the bespoke pieces. Certainly the PLA1 and PLA2, they're just going to be what they are until we have a replacement for them. The memory chips.
Just to say, Sean, they will be basically the 9572 and a 95144 CPLD surface mount jobbies.
Okay.
So the versions I'm working on will be available on a bit like, you know, sort of like the ZX ULAs where they're mounted on a 40-pin thing, but obviously for the purposes of this, they go straight on the board.
Right, yeah. And the working title for that is the Plaque Plus. So hopefully that will give us modern replacements. That really only leaves a couple of harder to find components. One is this TOCO that we were talking about, which is a variable inductor. That's optional. And particularly once you go to RGB, if you can do that, a lot of folks in the States have a harder time doing that. You need some sort of a converter. But that'll get rid of this component. And then we've got a few others. We've got these kind of wonky filter caps here that are still needed when you're dealing with composite output and the video signals, but hopefully we'll get those down. And we've, so far, based on the footprint I've dealt with, using not extremely small traces. I've gotten the board down to about here. That leaves a lot of free space up here for an RGB, and then it leaves some other space for maybe putting the AY sound chip on board, or maybe even 2 AY sound chips on board. That would be fantastic, because then you could have stereo. That leads to the notion that you would probably need to, oh, and then of course put memory on board in addition to the 2K or the 4K that's already there. Put the full bank of memory. Now that would kind of put Jay out of business for the RAM expansion, but you know, for people who kind of want to have an all-in-one board that they can play with, it may be the Aquarius next. I don't want to say that it's, or maybe the Aquarius Plus will be kind. We won't want to steal the Spectrum Next name, but that's where I'm headed. I'm also trying to work on. Some of you saw I'm trying to create the Aquarius equivalent of this, which I have been very recently schooled and told that it's not quite as simple as just showing a memory map because of the way the Aquarius handles I/O. So hopefully somebody with a little more familiarity with the systems can jump into the document mapping the Aquarius that I've started.
You probably noticed I had a bit of a read through. I've already made one edit on it because
excellent, thank you.
You had a value wrong, so I've read what was already there.
I have many values wrong. So yes, if you'd like to read it, the link is in the forum. I have invited you as editor, or I've invited some of you as editors if you're interested in that. Martin, I apologize in advance. We're stealing copiously from your website, but it is an open source project, so none of us are looking to make any money on that. I would just like to make that available so that programmers can have a bit more of a consolidated resource, not having to jump through 3 websites and 6 different PDFs.
I'd just like to say as well, to Martin, thanks for the site. It's been a huge technical resource, but one thing that's always worried me is since you very rarely seem to be around anywhere, we were always worried that it was just going to suddenly disappear one day.
Yeah, and we've had folks who have lost interest, some real shining stars. Certainly Bruce Abbott, who developed the micro expander and some of the basic components of that Mac is working on for the RGB, and certainly Jay has corresponded with him in the past. Just kind of lost interest, and that just happens. I get that. Maybe he'll come back to the fold one day, but I'm sure he's off in New Zealand doing awesome stuff outside of the computer world. That's, I think, it for me. Matt, did you want to kind of show off your masterwork?
Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything set, but I can, let me see if I can share my screen. So like I said, I just kind of got into this in late November. And then when I got the hardware, I started realizing when I wanted to mess around with like just testing basic stuff out and some assembly, it was difficult to like kind of create a screen layout without having to manually poke and figure out the character set and all that stuff. So I kind of set about, let me just see if I can share my, Sean, you might have to enable screen sharing if that's possible. Otherwise I can just talk through it, but.
Yeah, so I made you host for now, so you should now be able to.
Great, let's see.
And then when you're done, I'll just reclaim it.
Yep. So this project, it's a web-based application, and it started out. Can everyone see my screen? Is it showing up for everyone? Good. Yeah. So it started out literally as like one of the first weekends that I had my Aquarius. I just started, kind of like a weekend hack fest of creating some real simple tile editor that could then generate the code that would be kind of pastable into emulator or into transfer to cassette tape and played on the actual Aquarius. And so what I came up with was ultimately called, I call it Aquarius Draw, and it is just a full-featured kind of like a paint application, but using all of the limitations and character set and such for the Aquarius. And so and I might actually have one new feature that I just kind of hopefully will get released today that I can preview here. But yeah, so it's real simple, and my concept was just to keep everything simple. And so you have on the left side, you just have the character selector, and I have it rearranged in kind of a more logical order for design for most aspects. So you've got your characters and the numbers and symbols at the top, then you've got the arrows and directionals, then you got the classic running men and the similar icons for that, or glyphs, and then the space imagery and what limited characters they give you. But then you also get down to the more the bloxel type design aspects and all that. So but for those that prefer the original, you can actually right click on anywhere on the character set and just select original layout, and that'll be mapped from 0 to 255 based on how it is arranged in the character ROM on the Aquarius, which is actually probably more useful if you're doing stuff with the bloxels. They're somewhat more logically arranged and depending on your design requirements. But so that's the character selector. Then you've got, of course, the background and foreground color selectors at the top, and you get the nice preview down in the bottom left corner. And then you get the main drawing interface where it really is just clicking and dragging around to do as you want. And there's a lot of convenience, and so if you hit F1 while you're doing it, you can kind of get a little pop-up that shows you the different keyboard shortcuts. And because there are a lot of things that you can actually control with the keyboard instead of needing to always move the mouse around. For instance, on the tile set or on the character set, you can use the number pad up, down, left, right, all 8 directions to kind of traverse through the character set. The / will change to the eraser. The asterisks will change to the solid color. Then you've got like the plus and the minus on the number pad will cycle previous and next tile, which is kind of convenient if you're, you know, depending on the design, you can just kind of do things pretty simply just by using the keyboard input and things like that. And then, so the canvas, I'll just reset it here. It's the standard, so you got the standard 40 by 24 columns, cells, and then you can adjust the background or the border by, you just set the design however you want it. You know, it don't matter, but then once you have that set, you just click on the border and that'll change the border, and that all gets generated out to the code nicely. So I tried to include as much as I could from the Aquarius limitations. There's that hidden 25th row that is not part of the actual map system. When you generate the code, it just will fill in that top hidden row with whatever you have set for the border by default, but you can obviously poke, you know, to access that top row. And then so that's it. And then, you know, you can just drag and some other nice convenient shortcuts. Let me just see here. So if you have something selected, like let me well, let's just do this. So like say you want to make a nice grass train or something, you can hold in the arrow keys. So if I hold in the down arrow, that'll draw, it'll fill in any blank cells from your mouse cursor down in the direction that you're drawing. So if I just hold in down, you can real quickly kind of create scenes or whatever without having to manually fill in everything, which I've used quite a bit just on my own experiments and things like that. And then, so that's, and if you hold in shift key when you do it, then it'll actually fill all the way to the edge of the screen. So, and again, these are all both in the little help thing. And then if you click the manual there, click the full manual link down at the bottom, there's a pretty detailed web page I made just to demonstrate more of this. And then on the right side, you've got different, so the top button just will toggle the grid, the overlay there. And then this is the selection tool, which is convenient. Let me just load up. Sean's been excellent at creating all these little kind of demonstrations, which are loaded in as templates that you can just load. And so the selection tool is that middle button there. And with that enabled, you can go from top left to bottom right and select whatever you're after, and then move it wherever you want on the screen. And then if you middle click with that or press V on the keyboard, you can just paste the character sets like that. You can press X and that'll cut that out. I'm still experimenting with how to handle the background. I think I'm going to change that. So if you cut an element, it'll fill in the background with whatever the most used background is. So in this case, it would have filled it in with gray, which makes more sense when you're cutting. But so there's just the selection tool, which is convenient like that to quickly copy complex characters and move them around and whatever you want with that. And that was a feature that thanks to Sean testing came about. Originally, I had not even, I thought about it, but I didn't know that I wanted to get that involved. But it turns out it's one of my most used features also. Before that, I had actually programmed in, if you hold in the control key, the right control key, at this point, I'm kind of remapping things, but if you hold in the control key and then use the arrows when you're not in selection mode, you can offset the columns or the rows based on where your mouse is. And I'd use that initially, like, which is helpful if you're trying to center things on the screen, but it moves everything. So obviously the selection tool makes more sense for that. And then the third one is the preview, which I'll demonstrate in a little bit. This next line is less useful, but it's still, oh, let me load up. one of these here. Yeah, so this is useful. So if you only want to apply like the background color or the foreground color or the character, but don't want to change the other elements, you can enable or disable any one of these. So if we wanted to just recolor this man down here, we could just toggle the foreground color and then like select a green color. And then when you paint over that, you know, real simply, you can recolor just certain aspects of that. Same with the background. If we want to just change it to a yellow background, you'd select the background color, and then you just fill in the background like that. So convenient, but probably not often used, but they're there. And similar with these green buttons here. So if you want to do a full reset based on whatever character you've selected, you can just click reset canvas, and that might not be working because I think that's something I was just messing with, but normally that would fill in the entire canvas with whatever character set you have selected. And same with, oh, I think I was just yeah, I was just pressing the wrong button. So yeah, reset will clear everything, and then fill canvas will, whatever you have set for your character preview down here, fill canvas will fill that in. Same with the background, foreground, and characters. That's similar to these buttons up here. So if you want to change the characters to like dots, you could just fill in the characters but leave the background. Again, these are things you'd want to use before you actually start designing anything because it will impact the entire screen. But it's there. And then you've got your file name and your input output. When you save it, the scene just saves as a very simple JSON file, which can then be loaded back in for future editing. And then I'll just load in this here. And then you've got the generate code, which it's not probably the most efficient, but it's functional, at least as a kind of a boilerplate. And so you have the option to generate the basic code, which it's basically just data statements that get moved onto the screen with some initialization using Mac's awesome kind of assembly filler to fast fill it at first, and then it goes from there. You can customize the line numbers. So if you want the main code to start at a certain line, you can just change that and everything will update. And that's just if you're trying to retrofit this into existing code. And again, you know, it really is just meant to be a boilerplate to quickly get you started, but then you obviously can expand and add what you want. You can remove spaces if you're concerned with the kilobyte usage, or you can toggle machine language, which outputs it to either TASM, which can be compiled with like the TI-83 compiler, even on 64-bit Windows, and it's just a very simple way to convert your binary or your assembly into a cassette loadable binary. And it uses James the Animal Tamer's cassette loader header information here, and then elements of what I learned from Mac, from his code that he's shared. And assembly is just amazing as far as Aquarius. It's a world of difference when you actually, everything is just instant, you know, as far as graphic rendering and stuff compared to the basic commands. But and you can also toggle for the PASM conversion. So there's multiple options there. Then when you want to save it, you can just click the save button and save it as either a text file if it's in BASIC, or if you have assembly, by default it just saves to a .asm file, or you can copy it to your clipboard. So it's just a really, you could just copy it then paste it into Aqualite or, you know, whatever emulator you want to use, and just see how it looks on the actual device or on an emulator. And then when you're ready to generate a preview, you can click the little top right thumbnail option, and that just generates I was kind of happy with how this turned out. It went through several evolutions, but there you can see the Aquarius cart featured on there, and Roy's new Aquaworm cassette is featured in there too. So, but yeah, so this shows you a preview if you want to simulate kind of how it would look on a really dirty, filthy, old 1980s CRT look. You can enable that for fun, or monochrome, and again, it's just, you know, a simulation, but and then you can save it out as a high quality ping just for, sharing elsewhere or you know, manipulating in another application, or you can click upload to the gallery, which, and there's normally fields there, so I'll have to look into that. But this allows you to just upload it to a little website page where, so yeah, so then it would show up on this little page here where you can just view what's up there. And props to Sean for for having the artistic talent to do things that I certainly don't. But and then going back here, so one other cool new feature that I'm basically 99% done with, and this was also inspired by Sean, and he doesn't know of this, but I'll preview it right now. So let's say that we want to make just the classic little character, the running man or whatever he is. And then, but Sean kind of got me interested in voxels and things like that. So a new feature I have been working to add, if you hold in the left control key with whatever character or tile you've selected, you'll get some new options down here alongside the character preview. And what this will do by default is it'll produce the 4x4 voxel equivalent of whatever you're drawing, or whatever the character you've selected. So now if I click there, you get the enlarged jumbo-sized version of that character, which makes it really interesting and kind of convenient to just design, I don't know, whatever you want. And you can flip them around. So if let's just select the spaceship thing, using the arrows here, so you can actually have, you know, whatever you want, which is, I was just messing with this last night, and you can, it's kind of interesting what you can, so like if you rotate the pants upside down, and then you select the UFO upside down, there you created some rabbit or something really pretty quickly. So that, I think that'll be a lot of fun to mess with. And I'm also working to get the 2x3 version, which are skewed, but they're nicer because you can actually fill in the background and foreground separately. These other ones, they use kind of inverted characters to generate some of those pixel data, pretty much. So with the 2x3s, let me just turn this back. Oh, and you can also mirror them left and right, or top and bottom, which, you know, most things that's not necessary, but for character sets and you know, there's probably some clever things you can do just by messing with these in the enlarged voxel format. And yeah, the 2x3s, you know, it'll replicate essentially the same as best as it can, but you lose two rows of pixel data basically. But again, useful. And then that's it in a nutshell. And you can right click. That's the other feature. If you say you're just using this to design some elements for your existing code, well, if you have the selection tool enabled and you select whatever you're interested in, then you can actually right click, and if you select copy poke data, either the raw data or the line numbers or the data rows, what that will do is it'll just copy the selection, so then it's ready to paste wherever you want it. So very handy. When I first started kind of designing this and putting this together, I'd come across a few pretty old editors and things online that you know, they didn't have color support, and they were not full screen or anything. So this was just my attempt at making a all-encompassing, free for everyone to use editor for their work on Aquarius. So that's pretty much my demo. If there's any questions, but that's it.
No, I've
got one
I'm just
question.
blown away. Yeah, go ahead, Mac.
It's fantastic. Is there an undo feature?
There's no, there's partial code for an undo feature. It is not yet implemented. So, but that's on the list.
Okay, so it's just one of those things. I was thinking, oh my god.
Yeah, so save often. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And I actually had something working at one point, but then it'll get there. So, and I think that's one of the main things that's still missing. Other than that, it's pretty well rounded out as far as a editor goes.
Looks absolutely awesome, I have to say. You know, and having used it as well, it is awesome. It was just the one thing that I was wondering whether I'd missed it. That was all.
Nope. Yep. I still that's on the bucket list. So
Cool.
Yeah. So again, if anybody has any questions, please speak up. But I've been
consider adding C language to assembler and basic, because there is a Z88 development kit, and Mattel Aquarius is in a list of supported platforms. I don't know if anybody here is writing for that platform in C, but it is definitely possible, and maybe that is a very good way of producing Aquarius software.
Good. Yeah, and Nick, I'd love to see folks be able to develop in C if possible. Obviously, you're going to be doing that on a more modern machine and then compiling to a binary file. But I would love to see somebody, and eventually I'll get there myself if nobody else does. I'd like to be able to see somebody have a very clear setup path for people who want to do that with a combined set of libraries that already map the Aquarius functions to that. So I would love to see a more formal version of that out there, because I think it's important. Matt, you're going to say something?
I was just going to say that I did look into that library with the C. What I would like to, it was kind of over my head as far as how to get everything set up and compiling and figuring out how to actually get it to the Aquarius. But I totally was just into that, trying to figure that out. So, yeah. And I think that's one thing that like Sean's advocating too. Right now, the Aquarius community pretty much lacks like a central, and I know Mac's actually working on some resources too, as I recall, and a website. So it would be nice to get all this stuff in one website so that we have a solid reference going forward with all this stuff. So
okay, Matt, I'm going to go ahead and take.
Oh, yep, I just switched you over, so you should be
okay. Let's see, where am I? Oh, I guess I'm host again. Awesome. All right, I'm going to just to tag on to what Matt said, and again, fantastic work as usual.
Yes, indeed.
Let me show if I can do this. Where'd I go? So I'm going to switch over to my screen. Here's an example of why this is important. Here's a prototype screen, and Nick, hopefully my Russian is not too bad. If you can see this, this is a prototype screen design for a Tetris type game. Although it has, it's yet to be written, obviously, but it gave me the opportunity to kind of figure out the elements. It uses two physics engines. One, the typical dropping blocks option, but then once the blocks hit either a wall, another block, or the bottom, they slide diagonally to fit in place. So it's very much Tetris-like, but it's in English, it looks like peak top, but in Russian, it's actually reactor. And fortunately, I only chose words that could be done with the English language set, because you don't have a lot of the extended characters in Aquarius, like the TS or the some of the others. So I deliberately chose words that do that. So this is the Russian version of it, and I'll kind of show you what the American version of it is, so you can see what the translations are roughly. I don't want the assembly, I want the American version. There we go. So you've got a number of bins at the top, which you can drop in. They drop different colored pellets. They start off as inactive, but then when they hit either the sides, another pellet or something, they lose your ability to move them as much. You have the different valves that you can control. I think in Russian I call them leads or something like that. And you have a shift counter, much in the same way you do in Tetris, which is in the lower left. On the right, you have your megawatt output. You have to stay within a particular range, and you keep those megawatts by generating connections, creating a steam, which you can see at the top. You release that steam through one of the two valves at the top. And you also need to make sure that the heat, the thermos within the particular reactor don't get too hot. As you burn off steam, the water level goes down. You can see I kind of have that swirling wave at the top, and hopefully that would be animated. But you also get pellets like the one in the upper right that replenish that coolant level. So it's right now it's a proof of concept, but the important thing is I wouldn't have been able to prototype this nearly as quickly without a tool like the Aquarius Draw. So for those of you who are interested in this, please give it a try. It's a great tool. Don't forget this donate button. Not that we're looking for money, but you know, I do feel it's important to, if you use it for more than a certain amount of time, which I certainly did, not just you know, in helping Matt with some of the help screens and stuff like that, but also for some of the personal development stuff. You know, toss him some money for, you know, a beer or donuts or whatever makes him happy. So that's it for me. We are at 5 after. Does anybody need to take a break? Should we come back in 15 or should we just kind of push on through? I'm fine either way.
I wouldn't mind to come for a break. Don't know how everybody else feels.
Okay, let's come back at 15 after the hour. It's about 5 after, so we'll come back at 15 after.
Cool. Sounds good. Cheers, guys.
that you typing, Mac?
I do apologise. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's good. I was just wondering.
I'm just wondering why that screen's flipped. Are you seeing that video flipped?
Which one?
Mine.
No, I can read it.
Okay.
Load ROM debug PT3 player. Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me on my screen, it's flipped vertically, horizontally. Sorry.
Oh well.
Because that's actually using OBS's virtual camera.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's actually from the real machine, RGB output, HDMI upscaler, HDMI capture, OBS Studio, virtual camera.
Well, that's a roundabout way to get there.
Yeah, it works though. Which is, yeah, fair enough. I was just wondering because, as I say, for me, it looks flipped. I was just thinking, it doesn't look right.
Yeah, it looks fine on your stream.
Yeah.
So yeah, a couple of folks did say that the stream is certainly watchable on Facebook. Unfortunately, I can't log in because then I have to log in as me and then it gets a loop back. So evidently it's working great on Facebook, the loop through. So.
Well, yeah, Rich is watching it on Facebook and thoroughly enjoying it.
Chandler?
Yeah, Richard Chandler. So that means we need to completely and utterly slate Aqualite now.
That may be the way James has joined as well too. So.
No, James had a lot of problems last time, didn't he, with audio?
He does have that problem, yes.
Having to swap back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah, David's watching via Facebook rather than Zoom.
Yeah, he had mentioned that as well too. So.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of stickies. So when you two start going at it, I can hold up this, or I can hold up this, or both. See, I don't have to make a post-it note for Michael because he's very docile.
To be honest,
that's the other one.
What I'm actually demoing has come from something Michael suggested.
We got the Macisms too. We got to do TBH. Well, good. It's always. I think these events always. Well, and the online interaction, of course, always spur new ideas. I had no idea that that Matt was still was working on the Bloxels thing, which is great.
It looks awesome. That's fantastic.
Yep. Next step will be page flipping and some animation.
Which is really easy to do, but it's going to have to be done through machine code, as we all know.
Correct. Yeah. What Matt and I have spoken of a little bit is there needs to be, the draw tool is just one tool.
Yeah.
I would like there. I mean, and I have no problem that it's in a web browser. Doesn't matter to me. Works perfectly fine. And it's kind of ironic that a BBS, which is basically what a modern website is now being used to actually write code for a machine that you would have had to plunk it in key by key or maybe get a cassette for it. So pretty amazing. So where I was going with that is I do think there's an opportunity to make a whole Mario Paint, as Matt and I have spoken of, suite that would have maybe some sort of a not necessarily a PT3, although it's a great format for music, but a music, AY music editor that could support single voice for people who didn't have an expander of some sort, the expanded voices with an AY, and then maybe even a dual AY chip that would allow people to do some composing, but make it in the same way that Mario Paint does with music. Make it much simpler. If people wanted to get in and do, you know, crazy 16th notes, you still have loops. The Vortex tracker tool, I think, is okay at that, but if you don't know how to set up envelopes and assign envelopes to loops, it can get very convoluted. I think there's a way to simplify that.
Well,
and then of course, marry the two, be able to have individual screens, then have delta files that say what you're going to change as the page flip with some sort of an increment in them, and then be able to tie those PT3 effectively music files to that. So you get a little bit more
I've been having a play. Now, I have done this. I'm not going to demo it today, but I've actually had MIDI output from the back of the Aquarius.
Right, that's super simple. You could also do DMX output, which is like a successor to the X11 format. There's that X11 thing out there, and basically all it is a mini expander with a bunch of GPIO ports on it. So.
Yes, and you know, I've actually done that. I've had now the difficulty is obviously basically interpreting the MIDI file.
Right.
Because
and having an available room in memory to interpret the MIDI file.
Yeah, interpreting the MIDI file within the limited constraints of the hardware you've got.
Right.
Because obviously the MIDI file can quite happily have events happening in the future. Now, the one thing the Aquarius does not have as standard is anything other than the vertical sync that can be used as a time base, but it's not on an interrupt. You've got to listen for it. So timing on an Aquarius, short of counting T states, is a nightmare.
I wouldn't mind everybody involved agreeing to a standard I/O for, as we said, the Dallas clock chip. I think that we could spare some I/O port somewhere that could be used for an RTC.
Do you know what the best thing would be? Right, in the mini expander board, adding a little jumper that allows you to jump the vertical blank to the interrupt line, and then you've got an interrupt-driven time base.
Oh, there you go.
That is such a simple. It's either going to be 50 or 60 hertz, but you know, it suddenly gives a huge because all your games suddenly you're not having to time it for vertical blank. You're actually just going right. Okay, the vertical blank's happened. We can deal with it.
Yeah.
So that would be, you know, and it's almost just like soldering a wire between two pins.
Sure.
And I'm surprised they didn't do it by default.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that for that, and then I could see it also for the other two clock signals, fee, quarter fee, and half fee. So. Yeah.
I mean, the V blank is the most important.
Right.
For pretty much everything. It's the most important because all the other clocks in the system are too fast to have an interrupt on.
Sure.
Because you can't do anything with them.
Yeah.
In the time frame. You know, so the V blank, it's used by anything that wants to do anything with screen animation, and it's used by anything that wants to do anything with timing, i.e. playing PT3 files or MIDI files or anything like that.
Okay.
So anyway, that's just a, you know.
Cool. Well, we left off with Matt showing off his great work. Let's continue on the development and software train. Roy, why don't you tell us about what you've been working on?
Yeah, can do. The timing is actually excellent. This was absolute complete fluke, but only as of this morning. So you guys might already know that a few months back, in fact, might even be close to a year back now, got a bit of glare of that I released a query worm to the world through Chronosoft. I'll try and get the glare off that because it's in a case.
That has many more syllables in it than I remember it.
That's my accent. Sorry about that. Aquarium is a difficult word to say when you're a Scot. We have the same problem with world and other such words with a letter R in them.
You have no problem with the word whiskey, though.
No problem with whiskey. Absolutely no problem with whiskey whatsoever. So yes, that was about a year ago, and what was nice about that was it was probably the first cassette release for the Aquarius in the last 35 years, 36 years, something of that caliber. And although it's quite a simple affair, being a variation of the traditional Snake game, I thought it was about time that we actually had some new software for the Aquarius, because its software library, let's face it, is quite small, and in the UK especially, unlike most platforms where cassette, the tape, was the supreme in the UK, right? So we got naff all on cartridge and very little on disc. It was all on tapes. However, the Aquarius decided to buck that trend, and all we ever got in the UK was mostly just the cartridges. In fact, I don't even remember ever seeing, I don't know if Mac does, but I don't remember ever seeing a cassette for sale in the UK for the Aquarius.
It's just the devil trying to load them, wasn't it, at the time?
It was, well, the thing is, of course, as we know, the cassette lead, although it's a simple thing to make for us now that we're this age and this experienced, back then it was a dedicated pinout for the Aquarius. So they forced you to buy the Aquarius tape deck. And the problem with that is in the UK, the tape deck was almost the same price as the machine itself.
It was actually more expensive.
Yeah, so it was ridiculous.
Tape deck was 59, and you could pick the machine up for 49.
There you go. There you go. So it was always a bit of an issue, and of course the cartridges were quite expensive if you could track them down. Anyway, and Chronosoft has helped with the release of the games. I've released another game which came out today, came out this morning. So it's on Chronosoft's website, and I've released Bomb Catcher 2. Now you might think, if it's 2, where's the first one? And the reason that this is Bomb Catcher 2 is because the original Bomb Catcher is a game I released for last year's 10-liner. And I enjoyed doing it so much that I thought, well, what could I do to make that bigger, make it better, and turn it into a full game? And so what I've actually done with Bomb Catcher 2, if anybody orders it on cassette, you'll get 3 versions on the tape. You'll get a 16K version, which is an all singing, all dancing. And I wish at the time I was developing this, I knew about Matt's Draw, because that would have made my life so much easier doing some of the graphics for the 16K stuff, because it was death by poke. As we've all done. We either sit there with squared paper, or we go straight to the keys, which I'm a bugger for doing. I'll go straight to the keyboard and start poking in values and thinking, no, that's not the right square. What else could I use? Can I get something a wee bit smaller? Will something fit in there? And so you end up with, I don't know if you can see that screenshot on the inlay, but doing things like the Game Over logo would have been a doddle. It would have taken me 5 minutes using Matt's software, as opposed to the it took me to develop it by poking. But as I say, it is for sale, and if you play it with the thing I discovered with some of the people that bought Aquarium didn't have RAM packs, which I thought was quite shocking these days, to be honest. But some people just have the bog standard Aquarius, and of course you needed at least the 4K expander to run Aquarium. So what I've done with Bomb Catcher 2 is put 3 separate versions on the tape: a 16K version, an 8K version, and a 4K version. So it means that anybody who has a machine out there with absolutely no memory expansion whatsoever will still have a fun game to play. And it was actually relatively easy to do, given that a 10-liner is what, half a K? It was, you could actually, when you think about it, you can actually do quite a lot if you've then suddenly got 4 kilobytes to play with. It's slightly feature hampered on the 4K version, as you might expect. So there's a lot more text on there than there is character graphics. But the gameplay is essentially the same, although you do miss out on the hyperspace feature, which you have on the other two versions. The main differences are a lot more graphics on the 16K version. It looks a little nicer. It also supports the joy pads and the AY sound chip on the 16K version, which I think is probably the first homebrew to do so. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I can't think of another homebrew where we do support the joy pads or the AY chip. I certainly didn't in Aquarius because I didn't really have enough knowledge to do so. But since, you know, I've been growing and learning like a lot of us have, Mac's been a great teacher with all these ASM stuff as well, which is fantastic. So it's been a bit of an eye-opener and doing lots of good things there. It will also be available as a digital download, which you can get for free, which I'll open up the HIO link to that as well. So there is a ROM version where you can just load into Aqualite or Virtual Aquarius or whatever you want to do with that, and you can play it from there. So it's been absolutely great fun to code. I've still probably got a couple of ideas left in me for other games, but I think that you guys will probably start to catch me up pretty soon with releasing your own stuff.
Here's hoping. So Roy, walk us through, for those who haven't heard it before, walk us through what your development process. Do you develop in BASIC? Do you develop in combination thereof, or how do you develop?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both. So I normally knock my original ideas up in just BASIC, just to make sure they're going to functionally work. And that's mostly because I'm just trying to get the graphics and the screen layouts working. So again, you know, Matt, you're a god, mate, because that's going to improve my development cycle at no end, but with having a tool like yours to do that. So if we just ignore what the great work that Matt's done for now, then it would literally be knocking it up just in a text editor in BASIC to start with. And I wouldn't be going anywhere near my real Aquarius until I got to a point where it would actually run in an emulator. Then I would try it on the real Aquarius just to make sure that all the timings and that all the graphics are in fact legit. I know with things like with Aqualite, a lot of work's gone into getting that character ROM spot on, whereas previous emulator it was a slightly off on certain number of the characters. So that's always an issue, just to make sure that that's okay. When you start then introducing the sound and things like that as well, that's also just making sure that they are in line, that they fit. What I tend to do then is I look for things that need the better performance. So that tends to be the movement aspect or the collision detection, or even just the drawing of things on the screen. As you guys have all know, BASIC can be quite slow when it comes to drawing things on the screen. Whereas if you do it in Z80, then you're getting that much faster. I think Matt pointed it out earlier that you get that almost instantaneous redraw, which is great for doing action games. It's really good. And at some point, I might actually go back and revisit Aquarius Worm and do a bit more in assembly. What I tend to do then is look at how that functions on the real Aquarius. So bring everything together. So I tend to then just dump everything out as data statements and poke statements. Again, when I originally looked at trying to do that, Mac was a big help. I know you keep mentioning that I didn't credit you in Aquarius Worm, mate. I apologize for that. You are credited in Bombcatcher.
I was only teasing you, mate.
I know you are, but if anybody tries to disassemble the ROM or anything, you'll see your name in glaring lights. So that's all in there. But yeah, so I then just poke it all directly in. The reason I did that is I've always been slightly infuriated by the two-stage loading process that the Aquarius has. So you have that basic loader, and then you load everything, then you load the machine code in later with, and that's always irked me.
Well, definitely take a look at the the ASM loader that Matt has incorporated, which again came from James Tamer, the guy who did Virtual Aquarius.
I was going to say, from James, we can very, very easily
single
step into into
yeah,
one
and
loader.
Basically what it does is it precedes the command line buffer with the load statement. So yeah, well, it's nice.
What it does is you load it, and it actually loads the machine code almost like it's been pre-poked into REM statements.
Oh, okay.
It's not quite that, but that is how it's done.
It's a single load and run, yeah.
Yeah. The only thing is, it won't work. It doesn't work on S1s. It only works on S2s.
That's absolutely fine. All my kit is S2s. Has anybody got an S1?
Anybody got an
S1? Yeah, I dumped the ROM and shared it in our last meeting, in fact, as I recall. And I was just going to say that if the loading from cassette in BASIC is too cumbersome or time consuming, I was going to say with these loaders that we have, it would be very easy to then convert them to load from cartridge as well, because I have the means to produce cartridge softwares, which would be instantaneous.
I would love to see these as cartridges. I wouldn't even know how to go about that. Is that something I can just talk to you about, mate, at some point?
Sure.
That would be brilliant, because that would be good. I mean, because the load times can be quite slow, because as you can imagine, there's an awful lot of data statements being tagged on at the bottom of this. So it can. I think Aquarium only takes a couple of minutes to load, but I think Bombcatcher's probably about 3+ minutes. It's almost, in fact, those 3 versions, I don't know if you can see that, but those 3 versions have almost filled up a C15 tape.
What I will say, Roy, as well, is something I've played with, and what's name is the ability to do first off turbo load, which is by basically rewriting the 600 board or whatever it is loader, which I've done, and also the fact that you can then like you can on, for example, a Specky, load a screenshot directly straight in, and so you get a loading screen, and also play music whilst you're doing it.
Wow.
So if you want to give the full sort of, let's go back to, let's say, Specky or BBC or whatever experience, then that is possible as well.
That would be awesome. I think that's something we should probably look at for any future releases.
Yeah, there's that and ROMs. You know, the two things. The small downside to ROMs is obviously for Coronasoft or whatever there is quite an expense. Have you got?
I probably wouldn't be looking at the sort of resale scale of a cartridge, because you're right. It's the cost of the case and and the component. But I think maybe for a select few, having it on cart would be fantastic. I think that the only way that Chronosoft are doing it is because it was, up until a couple of years ago, it was a platform that Simon had never even heard of.
and B, he's got an Amstrad tape-to-tape desk copier.
Exactly. He's already got the equipment to do it. Yeah.
He does, yeah, and of course, the minute I said we could do it on tape, that he was all up for that, and it's brilliant. I think the work that they do is fantastic for being a non-profit company. Yeah, and, so I'm glad that Chronosoft have helped me produce or helped me release Aquarius software in 2021 or 2020 and 2021.
And I can vouch for Chronosoft too, because even in the US, it's shipping is almost nothing, and then it got here pretty quick when I ordered that. So, bravo.
Yeah, I need to order a copy myself.
Fantastic. Well, if you look on the Chronosoft website now, there's now two whole Aquarius titles in amongst the hundreds of Specky ones.
One of the things that was casually mentioned for those of the folks who are either watching this after the fact or watching on the stream, when we talk about S1 and S2 and hopefully even S4 or whatever is in the Aquarius 2 that Roy will talk about a little bit later, that's the system ROM. That's the DOS, if you will, for the Aquarius. I think we're coming to a point where, as has been the case with the Commodore 64 and other things, we as a community will need to develop a new version of that. One that has maybe optimized code, maybe includes better and maybe more condensed basic commands. Who knows? Maybe even one that if we have a reworked version of the PLAs where we can get around the 8K limit, so we have a little more elbow room to work on. So when we talk about S1, S2, we're talking about the version of the SysROM. So
yeah,
not actually, I was going to say, I'm not actually sure
fine.
how many S1s were ever released. Based on what we've seen so far, I don't think there was many.
I don't think I've ever seen one, in fairness.
I wound up actually having one, the one I gave to my friend Larry Shilkoff. I had forgotten that it had S1 in it, and the only way you can tell is when you have the boot up screen, it doesn't say anything for the S version. So
you gave one away.
It's not a big deal. Well, I had a spare one, and he's an electrical engineer. So
yeah, you gave one away.
Well spent. Right.
Yeah, I have three. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ray. I was actually going to turn the table over to you to have you talk about your development. So it's a good segue.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say I have 3 S1 machines by some odd coincidence. One of them is set up here in my office. And it was that machine whose ROM I actually dumped and shared with the group here during our last meeting. So I'm glad we finally have that ROM archived. So apologies again for taking so long to do that. Does that mean I'm next? Okay, excellent. Well, if I had hoped to have this much further along by now, but at least I have something to show. If I may share my screen. Okay. Let me just share out this window here. Okay, so everyone should be seeing my web browser right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've begun the work of putting together an Aquarius website, and my main reason for doing this, there are a couple things I want to accomplish with the website. I want it to be a resource for documenting the original hardware and software. So what I've been doing over the last year and a half or so is I've been collecting photo-ready models of the original Aquarius hardware and peripherals. Buying ones that are still brand new in the box or at least brand new looking, so that I can get some nice pictures taken. And my photographer, who is also my brother-in-law, has been helping me to photograph all of these professionally. And cleaning up the photos. That's still a work in progress. It's been very slow because he's either been busy or sick with COVID or both. But we're working on it together. And I've got a couple things set up on this website, which again is a template that I'm sort of building from scratch. What I want to do someday is to have sections in there for the hardware, sections for the software, documentation. I've been collecting software too and scanning the boxes and all of the manuals and cleaning all of them up so that they look as nice as they can possibly look. And I want to have them available on the website as well so that people can view them in various formats. And one of the things I've been experimenting with lately is a pretty crude little test that I worked up for viewing the boxes. So you can actually create a 3D model of the box and flip it around a bit so that you can see what the original packaging looked like for the various games. It's basically a 3D model that I mapped scans of the box onto, all 6 faces of the box. And I've got scans of all the boxes. I just need to actually sit down and have the time to put them all together and design the website with the content that it needs. And it'll include some of the content from the Aquarius card in terms of the trivia and other stuff about all the games will all be there. And eventually to expand it to also include a blog so that I can write about, Aquarius development and related things in classic computing, which I've wanted to do for a while, and also have a tutorial so that people who are new to programming, new to working with computers, embedded systems, new to Z80 assembly language programming in particular, can have a resource where they can go and get step-by-step lessons, which will walk them through the process. Sort of design it as a complete embedded systems curriculum with the Aquarius as the target platform. and hopefully that will be versatile enough and generalizable enough for other Z80 based systems as well. But the Aquarius will be the initial platform. So that's one of the things I've been working on. Again, it's been a slow process just because I've been so busy with everything, but it's coming along, and I hope to have the website finished very soon. So it's again, I wanted to have much more of it to show, but what's there is at least gives you an idea of where I'm going with it. I also have some hardware projects in the works. Sean, you mentioned the 32K module that I've been building for a while. The board for which looks like this. And it's an exceedingly simple board. And I'm actually developing a replacement for it because I bought 100 of these to start with because I wasn't sure how much demand there would be. And I sold all 100 eventually. So I had another batch of 100 made, and I'm down to my last dozen or so of those. And I really don't want to have to buy more 32K modules. I'd like to actually take the opportunity to replace it with something better. So I have a design worked out for a 512K byte RAM upgrade for the Aquarius, which I picked 512K because that's the largest through-hole 5-volt SRAM part that still seems to be made in a PDIP package. So that's what I'm standardizing on. So I'm augmenting this design with a little bit of hardware to actually divide the memory up into 32K byte banks. And there are going to be 16 of them. So when you start up the system, it will select the lowest of the 32K banks, and you can just use it as a 32K module as you did before. But if you have software that supports it, you can actually write a byte to one of the I/O ports in the Aquarius, and it will select one of the other banks, and it will swap it into that expanded memory window for the 32K. So the entire 32K window will be swappable. And of course, you'll have the original 4K bytes of RAM for parts of memory that need to remain persistent, like the stack and other things. So there isn't any software that will support that yet because it would have to manually control the banking, because that wasn't part of the original Aquarius design. But the capability will be there for people who want to use it. And that board will also be versatile enough so that I can populate only the parts of it that I need for 32K modules and use the board in those as well. So it'll serve both purposes. I actually have that design prototyped. I'm currently using I/O port E7 to control the memory banking, which is unused according to the documentation. And it also simplified the logic a bit. I was able to boil it down to like 2 or 3 extra TTL chips. So that's something that I have in the works. I want to have that done within the next couple of months. I'm also working on an expansion of my SuperCart board, which I use in the AquariCart. This is a cartridge ROM board, which supports up to 8 megabits, 1 megabyte of bank switched program ROM. That's what I'm currently using for the AquariCart. And it's basically going to be the SuperCart 2, which is going to be bank switch memory just like this, only it's going to also include a EEPROM, basically a 3-wire chip that will allow you to save data in the cartridge as well. It won't be very much. It'll be enough for a high score table, game settings, and other things, but it'll actually be writable and it'll be permanent. So you can write data to the cartridge and keep it persistently across reboots. And one other project I've just recently begun working on is a controller multiplexer for the mini expander. This is basically a box that you can plug into both ports of the mini expander, which will take the original 2 controller ports and break them out into 4, so that if you wanted to, you could plug in 4 hand controllers or 4 Atari type joysticks, so that you could do 4-player games as well. Because I think a ASCII art version of a game like Warlords would be very nice to have for the Aquarius. And I'm also going to include a port for an external mouse. And all of that will be available through the mini expander, along with a pass-through mode of some kind for software that only talks to the original 2 ports. So it'll be usable in both configurations. So that's what I have going on. The website I want to finish up first to finally get that out there in the world, because I've been promising it for a while. And then the other two hardware projects I hope to finish up over the summer.
Jay, so on the God, what was the last thing you were talking about?
The
got a shiny object.
oh, I'm sorry. The controller multiplexer.
Yeah. So are you doing that with a single AY chip as the I/O, or are you adding 2 chips on it? You're just toggling.
Yeah, I wanted it to be backward compatible with the original mini expander, so it's just going to plug into the 2 controller ports on the back. I wish I could only use one, but unfortunately, as you said, the GPIO pins offered by the 8910 are either all input or all output, and you can't do both. And obviously, you would need both for a multiplexer, because you would need output to select the peripheral that you want, and then an input port that you can use to read input from it. So one of the ports is going to be input, one is going to be output. And
so
you're
basically generating almost like 256 input ports by having an output port, the control switch input port to read.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in other words, the output will select one of the 4 one of the 4 input ports for a hand controller. So you can switch back and forth between them very quickly and read input from the same input port on the mini expander side. And then it'll be different modes too. It'll remap the pins in different ways for peripherals that use a different pin out, like the Atari joysticks, which are much more plentiful than the Aquarius hand controller. And there are different ones out there to suit people's preferences. And then of course the mouse.
Sega,
yeah. And then of course the mouse would also be readable through the input port. And that box will require external power. I figured I would just use USB for that with a little microcontroller to handle the peripheral switching. So that's what I have in mind for that.
Okay, going on to your memory expansion, I think we probably need to discuss, because I'm looking at implementing the CPM side of things. So we probably need to make sure that the whatever it is you implement hardware-wise will be compatible with the CPM hardware stuff, software stuff that I'm looking at implementing. So the back switching, etc., will work.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, I had originally what I first thought about doing was designing taking the 32K memory window that's available in the Aquarius, and dividing it into 16K of fixed memory and 16K of bankable memory. But that would have made the design much more complicated to build and to use.
Yeah, and that won't work with the CPM, because obviously when you use the CPM, the lower bank gets switched to the upper bank. So 00 to 3000 or 2000 or whatever gets it's actually no, it's 00 to 4000 and gets switched up into the top 16K, so C0 upwards, and then you've basically got RAM down at the bottom end, so your entire 3 banks of the lower end can be switchable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so going with a full window that you can swap in its entirety seemed like a better way to go, especially since we already have the onboard 4K, which remains persistent. So
that can't be lost, because unfortunately that is screen memory. And
yes,
actually really doesn't exist as memory for all intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
For now.
Yeah.
Now. But
yeah, so that'll give us much more space, and we can even go larger than 512K. All I'm going to be doing is using a 74 LS174, I think, to handle the bank switching, and I could put in, I guess, a 273 to give me more output pins if I wanted to.
Use a GAL or something.
Yeah, or use that too, and you could actually go up to a couple of megabytes of RAM with that design. You just have to connect the top address lines to a bigger RAM. But 512 would be, as I say, through-hole compatible, so I could use the same board. And the reason I went with TTL as opposed to a GAL is because I wanted the option of omitting the 174 and other chips that I wouldn't need for the 32K. You could just leave those parts out and minimize the solder points for a 32K ROM.
I was just thinking, because obviously, I mean, I don't know about yourself, but I found the GAL 16s, etc. Buying them out of China, they cost me about, I don't know, they're about 4 or 5 pence each.
And TTL is still very cheap. So I like doing it old school anyway. So that's sort of the approach that I like to take. Oh yeah, there you go.
That's just one box.
Okay. Well, Jay, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to hear what you're working on.
Remote instead.
Yes. What's that?
Smash a re-up and then use the remotes for the joystick pads.
Oh yeah, well, it's entirely possible. I mean, it would not be difficult. And Mac and I talked about this a couple of months ago. It would not be difficult to create a mini expander or a cartridge that accepted. Again, you would probably have to use the external power supply, as Jay was suggesting. It would not be difficult to create a standard or even a Bluetooth interface that emulated the directional pushes from the control pads. It just takes time to do it. You know, somebody would need to create the stack. It would have more processing power in that unit than the whole Aquarius has combined. But if you did want to attach kind of a standard, you know, PS2 or PS5 stick, you could, using the standard HUID interface to it, and you could map that the disk to maybe one of the analog ports, and then the other 6 buttons you could map to the
using Arduino and basically output into the GPIO. You could, you know,
right. I wish the keyboard was as easy to deal with, but again,
well, it is. You can still do the keyboard. You can do keyboard to PS2 with Arduino.
Well, sure, yeah, but you know, you gotta, yeah. Okay, so before we move on to Mac, Nick, did you have anything you wanted to show off, or are you good?
Okay, let me share my screen.
Hold on a second. Let me make you host. Let me see. I may have to reclaim it from Jay. There we go.
And Jay,
all right,
I just wanted to say the website looks phenomenal. The high quality photos are stunning.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm still feeling my way into modern web development. I just recently discovered Flexboxes, which made the menu on the top much easier to do than the quadruply nested divs that I was using before. But yeah, it's coming along well. I'm pleased with the photos, especially. My brother-in-law did a good job.
You are about 10 years behind, aren't you, on technology? As you said earlier. Sorry, Jay.
Well, maybe Jay, after this whole thing clears up, you can take a trip to Roy's house and photograph the Aquarius to do some beauty shots from that.
Yes.
I don't mind providing some high quality photos of it if you need them, Jay.
Yes, thank you. There are very few out there, so that'd be a great resource. Yeah.
There's even fewer units than there are photos of it. Trust me.
Oh yes.
Well, and I think that's been, just as I've been discovering Aquarius resources and stuff, it's been difficult, like Martin's website, but the pictures and scans and stuff are such low resolution. So it's awesome to be kind of developing these HQ versions.
Yeah, Martin's site hasn't been updated since about 2014, I think.
Yeah, and it's been a great resource. I certainly can't say anything otherwise. But yes, a lot of the pictures of the Aquarius that you find out there are either scans of old, promotional artwork and ad copy from magazines, things like that. What I'm trying to do with my brother-in-law, in fact, is sort of take pictures that reproduce or are reminiscent of the compositions in the original ad copy, because but of course photographed in modern high quality.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, sorry.
Okay, Nick, whenever you're ready.
You, Nick.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, this year I submitted a game to basic 10-liner contest. Again, sorry for that sound. Sorry for that sound. Moment. Okay. So what is interesting about that game is that there are 5 levels, and I use procedure generation for creating these levels. So basically, there are formulas for every line based on its number and based on random data, and also some rules for example, if the ledger was just generated, it will not generate another one. And relatively simple rules, but these rules make the level looking not like a mess of things, looking like a loader runner like thing. And it saves memory, so there are 5 different levels in 10 lines of code. So maybe procedure generation is the next big thing for 10-liners. I don't know.
Well, procedure generation was used by Elite. So there you go.
So I'm translating a gameplay video, so this is an unsuccessful attempt. By the way, look that the robot transforms into a spaceship when it descends from that level. Let me show that moment. So there is here special effects and different animation frames, and then I will show the successful attempt. So here we go up, and level is completed, and that is my second game for Aquarius, and I created another 10-liner 2 years ago called Pixel Attack, with colorful squares descending from the top of screen, and you have to catch these things. And in this interesting fact is that the game was developed for Mattel Aquarius initially, but then I also ported it to ZX Spectrum, because there is a very similar thing in both machines, screen attributes. And because graphic was based on squares, then it was basically one-to-one porting, except the fact that Sinclair Basic is very different in nature. So spent a bit of time to do that, but I found that fact funny, that 2 machines look the same in some aspects. I'm pretty sure that I will participate in the contest next year. And I think again with some Aquarius game, because I like this platform for basic 10-liners, and the only category where it fits is Poor 80, because we have that limitation, 72 characters per line. So
actually, it would be 9 lines of code. So we're actually short an entire line of code with 72 per line instead of 80. So yeah, we should get bonus points.
Yeah, we should. I said this last year. You'll find that we never win. The Aquarius never wins, because it's such a restricted machine that I don't think people appreciate the amount of effort we have to go through to make it do anything.
Right, guys, are you allowed to use an extended basic cartridge?
No, not in the pure 80. You have to use excuse me, you have
in
to
other
use
categories.
Power on basic.
Is there an extended basic for Aquarius?
Okay, well, what if we change the basic?
That's fine.
No, that's cheating. That's cheating. And there is a version
stock
of extended
machine, yeah.
basic for the Aquarius, absolutely. And actually, the Aquarius 2 actually comes with it as standard.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Can we not write these games for the Aquarius 2?
I could. In fact, I am already converting some of my stuff to run on the Aquarius 2.
Because there is no emulator, and you and probably, I think Martin is the only other person I know who owns one.
Yeah.
I think there is somebody else in the group who does own one. So therefore, you're going to win that one. You can't lose that one for that machine.
You cannot win without the emulator, because Gunnar will be unable to run the game.
True.
And
He'll
as
just
written as the
he'll
rules.
have to take my word for it.
You'll have to say, you'll just have to send a video and say, "I'm sorry, there is no emulator. The machine is that rare."
Yeah, you have to. That's it. Here it is.
Well, actually, haven't they recently added support for the Aquarius 2 to MAME? You and I have been talking to one of the people on the MAME team, Mac, about improving Aquarius emulation in MAME. I think that was one of their projects.
It was one of their projects. I don't know whether they've done it yet.
Okay,
Wow,
well,
I
I
didn't
do
know
know that they recently added support for my SuperCart board. So bank switched ROMs are now possible on the Aquarius emulation in MAME. You can actually run the AquariCart software in MAME now if you wanted to, which is impressive.
Well, there is another idea. We can put an extended BASIC on the cartridge. The question is what this extended BASIC will be. I don't know. The easiest way is to extend the Microsoft BASIC, but it seems a bit illegal.
Well, I was going to say my submission would be extended BASIC, 10 lines, line 1, run Pac-Man. And it's in the ROM. Happy days.
Yes, so maybe it is an interesting project for a platform to create the extended BASIC, maybe with some graphic operators. In some sense, we have a very limited resolution graphic screen. We can use pseudo graphics, but draft lines and circles with that resolution. So actually, I will think about it. Seems interesting. I know one man who created a new version of ZX Spectrum firmware with intention to win in the next basic 10-liner contest. He finished the project, but did not produce any game since then. But it's a good idea.
I think a lot of it does come down to time for everyone. And I think myself, Sean, Jay, and Matt, I think out of the people who've been doing stuff majorly here, Matt's the one who's produced anything way faster than everybody else. Because I don't know, is it being young you have time? You're on mute.
No, I don't know. You know, it's been one of those things where my mind, after work and stuff, I've just about 2 months though to crank that out. So with limited time, no, time is not on my side either.
It seems to be more on your side than I think everyone else is.
So we are at we're at about 3 after the hour. Do we want to take another break, or did we want to just plow on through?
I could do with another quick bio. So
cool. So we'll come back at 10 after the hour. It's about 3 after. See everybody in about 7 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, no worries.
Let's mute as well.
the workshop, we'll be working with OLED displays. We'll see how we can connect both I2C and SPI displays to an Arduino Uno. We'll even build a temperature and humidity meter. We have a lot on display for you today, so welcome to the work.
Interesting videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, cheers, Michael. We can hear that. It's lovely.
Yeah, they've got those like the Atari S drive, isn't it? I think Banggood are doing them for about £10 with about 2 screens, aren't they? As well. Yeah, Banggood were doing 2 of those OLED screens. One's got the SD cards in the middle of it. And I think lump and Arduino underneath it, Uno underneath it.
Okay, that's. God, if you only saw the crap on my desk.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Roy. I've seen your desk and I know how perfectly pristine it is for everything you're doing.
I wouldn't go that far, but okay.
Well,
no, we almost had a catastrophe, guys, because look, I almost turned this off by accident, if anybody knows what that is.
Well,
the internet?
No.
Yes. Well spotted.
Look,
this is the internet.
Told you to send it to TJ. It solves his problems.
You've got to get it back to the Tower of Light, or back to Big Ben quickly.
It is still flashing, as you can see.
It's all right.
So
He's one of the elders.
So it's not the elders.
He's one of the elders. Okay,
good. It. It's fine. It's fine. I'm just going to carefully sit it over here. There we go. Don't worry.
For those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, you need to watch the IT crowd.
You should watch the IT crowd, definitely.
And then it will all become apparent.
Do you know what? Here's the sad thing, right? What I've actually done with this is put a Pi 0 in it, and I've got it running as a proxy, so I can actually turn off all the house's internet.
But why did you not just put a 555? Talk about over-engineering.
Yeah, I know, but what was I going to do? I've got piles of pies.
It's a nice Tanetta.
It is a Tanetta. Yes, it is. Very good.
All right, we're about ready to start up. As you can see, I've got my self-portrait done in Aquarius Draw on the screen. It may be a little.
Or do you mean it's just a really, really bright white?
It's just a white square, mate. Yeah.
Oh well. Who knows? Maybe I'll show it on the other screen. But
is that your really, really nice Aquarius logo you did?
I can load that up. Hold on a moment. Yeah, the load time is just incredible with the ASM. So. It may be kind of washed out as well too, but yeah, that's the proposed replacement splash screen if we ever change out the sysrom. So.
Which we will.
Yeah. It is difficult to see, but yeah.
Okay,
I think most of you have seen it probably posted on the forum anyway. Yeah, apart from Jay, who is still a refusenik in joining us.
It's not you, it's Facebook, believe me.
Well, you could be Snage Ellen instead.
Snage Ellen, I like it.
All right, so
hang on, that would make me Toy Rempelman. I don't like that very much.
Yeah, well, mine sounds actually a little bit better, Han Sherrington.
It does.
Yeah, I could live around the block from you, Roy. But I'd have to pick up the accent quickly. I don't know which one I'd pick up. There's so many, just as there are in the States. So, all right, Mac, we'll turn the floor over to you. You got a lot to show.
I've got a few bits. some bits I've been working on, sort of. I'm going to say, sorry, Jay, I think some of this may put you out of business, which is really, you know, but basically, what I'll do you want to give me the screen share stuff?
Yeah, give me a second.
What I've been working on is a couple of things. I've basically been working on something Michael suggested. Why don't we interface it with the ESP8266? Which, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically and I've got a few. Open a brand new one out of a box, which I don't want to lift that one up that's connected. It's basically that, for what you can see. It's a very, very small Wi-Fi designed for the Arduino. It's 3.3 volt, but it is 5 volt tolerant, which is good. And it connects to Wi-Fi networks. And it acts as a very, very simple AT modem driven device. So for those of you going back into the days who remember the old AT commands you used to type into modems, might be a little past your time, Matt. Don't know if you ever had to type in AT 1200, etc.
Actually, I did. My brother actually ran a bulletin board system in the early 90s. So yeah.
Yeah. So this little device uses still the AT commands to access Wi-Fi modules, etc. Now, what I've been working on is an extension to. This is where the breakout board, i.e. the micro expander breakout board, came about, because I wanted a pin connector for accessing the sort of expansion bus. Because, you know, when you're doing stuff on breadboards, you really don't want to be doing stuff on, you know, sort of designing PCBs and hoping it works. So I'm going to move the camera. And what you'll see is, there you go, that's the first ever new Aquarius, just showing it anyway, with a mini expander of the thing. And you can see here where I've actually done the lighting. I was just going to show that. That's the stuff that I posted to allow you to produce the pinouts. Don't think it's, there we go. So you can see against the pins the thing. So that was very easy. Just allows you to do using, you know, these classic DuPont connections. And then we've got little breadboard here. And on the breadboard, I've got a GAL, which is doing some logic decoding, and a 74 LS373 and a 74 LS244. For those that don't really know too much about them, the 373 is a logic latch and the 244 is a buffer. What that allows is basically, the way it's configured, it's a 1-bit I/O port, but technically it could be an 8-bit I/O port, but I've got it configured as a 1-bit port. So what I'll now do is I shall share my screen. Let me just move that over to there and work out which screen I need to share, because this gets very confusing when you've got 3 monitors. To this one. Right. I'm hoping you can see a few bits, and we should now be seeing. Right, let's just close that out of the way. Close that one. Right. So hopefully, what we're seeing now is you see the Aquarius USB Basic. Just to let you know, what you're looking at now, that is the real machine connected via my RGB interface to a HDMI upscaler via an RGB splitter into a HDMI capture card into OBS Studio, which is what you're seeing on the screen. I know it's a bit of around the houses, but it works. And from what you can see, the quality actually looks pretty reasonable. So what we'll do now, oh, wrong button. So we'll do Control C, and here is an app I loaded earlier. There's two parts to it. So I'll run the first part. Now, what I'll do here is I'll connect this serial connection here on the PC, which, just for those that I probably didn't show properly, we have this little thing here, which has got two USB TTL serial ports in. That one, this one here is connected to this board. This one is connected to one of these little thingy cards. We'll come back to that in a moment. Right, so if we now do a run, what we'll suddenly see is we're now talking at 9600 baud to the PC via serial. So this was really good, and I thought, fantastic, we can bit bang serial out of the Aquarius. However, and I say however, there is not much leeway in what is available in the processing power to do 9600 baud. It has a delay loop in there, which I can show from here in the actual Wi-Fi bit. The delay loop is 11, which is not a lot. So it outputs a bit, it counts to 11, it then has to output the next bit. Really not a huge amount of playroom to do stuff. So it was like, okay. But as you can see, it's very solid. It's a consistent 9600 baud output, and it works really, really well. So let me just now reset the machine. There we go. And if you were wondering, you can see there you go on the bottom that that's the HDMI upscaler saying what's going on. Because every time it does that, it tends to put a little thing, which is quite irritating, but you know. So we'll go back into the basic, and here I'll just do quick list, and then I'm going to do run 70. Now we can see 70 is doing a print in of 192. Now, for those of you who don't know USB Basic has out and in commands built in, which are really, really good for doing things like reading joysticks and stuff like that. So doing that, we'll now see it just displays 255. Now, if I move back over to here and start sort of typing some stuff, we should start seeing, let me move that over a little bit, that you start seeing some zeros coming in, which is showing that it's reading it, but it's not reading it perfectly at the moment. The problem I've had is I realized that bit banging wasn't quite enough, because you had to output the data and then had to rely on the fact that the data coming back in was going to be at the right point in time, which unfortunately, when you're talking to the the ESP device, it's not. So I do have these devices, which is shown on the camera, which are 16550s. They are USB, not USB, they are serial UARTs, which allow me to do it properly and then generate an interrupt so that the reply back is coming in. Now, I had started extending the basic, which is, that'll be in this one. So here with some Wi-Fi commands, which was basically wlist, which will list the available access points, WCON, which will connect to an available access point, WMount, which will mount a remote HTTPS/file directory, WDIR, which will give a list of the contents of that directory, WLoad, which will load a file from that directory, WRun, which will run a file from that directory, WStat, which will display the status of the connection, and WGET, which will load any HTTP/S page anywhere and display it on the screen. So completely useless. You could write a browser with it. You're not going to do much with the Spectrum, but you could if you really, really wanted to. So I started extending the commands and what have you to do it. But obviously I then hit this little breakpoint of, although I can write to the device very easily, reading back from it was a bit more awkward. So I needed a little bit more hardware. And again, typical me, I ran out of time. So, you know, I seem to have a habit doing that. But that is one of the things that I've been working on. I'll take the share off now. So that's one of the things that I've been working on, and hopefully we'll be able to, you know, sort of get a device to market. I'm going to extend Bruce's module, change the addressing on it because it's awful, and it uses the top. It basically restricts you to the top 1 to 8 ports because the addressing on it is so bad.
It's very port hungry, yeah.
And basically provide that with a link to an ESP module that you'll just be able to plug in and access to Wi-Fi networks, removing obviously the PT3 player in there, because realistically I don't think that's that useful. So that's what I've been working on anyway. I'm not 100% there with it. I wish I was a bit further down the road, but sadly, you know, I was hoping I could bit bang both ways, but obviously if you're outputting something, you can't read it at the same point when you're trying to do time code, obviously. So you have to have some form of hardware buffer in place first. So anyway, there we go.
Cool.
That's what I'm working on.
Yeah, very nice. So the Wi-Fi module that you're using, I presume that has an embedded TCP/IP stack?
Yes, it does.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, you have to do nothing. It's the ESP8266. It's designed for the Arduino, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So it handles HTTP, HTTPS, and everything. I mean, can you imagine trying to calculate a HTTPS certificate exchange on an Aquarius?
No, you could never do it.
Well, not before the certificate expired.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been looking at an Ethernet module, which was also designed for the Arduino, as many of them tend to be, and that one also has an embedded stack, which makes this kind of thing much easier. Yeah,
it's because it's so simple. It's just got RX, TX, and ground as far as it goes, and then basic commands. And there is so much information out there about it. I just thought, you know what? Everyone's using Wi-Fi anyway. What's the point of even trying to consider hardwired? Because for a lot of people, I think they'd actually find it more difficult.
Sure.
You know, so that's basically what I've been doing. And, you know, sort of, I found there was quite a few little things in the way, in that Bruce's micro expander is horrendous when it comes to port usage. I mean, Jay, if you look at the logic on it, you'll look at the port selection and go, fair enough. it uses, I ended up having to use port 192 or above, because every port below that was inadvertently consumed by the micro expander because of its bad address decoding.
I was about to say that sounds like a decoding issue. It's
is.
only doing partial decoding.
He looks at 2 address lines.
Oh wow. Yeah, so you're looking at all kinds of overlap there or duplication of mappings. Yeah. I didn't know that about the micro expander. That's unfortunate.
Well, to be fair, if you've got a micro expander plugged in, what else are you gonna have plugged in anyway? You know, it works when it's the only device plugged in. But when you combine it with a mini expander or with other stuff, it starts to butt heads with it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, one of the projects I've been thinking about for a while, and I might still do it, is designing a little daughter card that mounts in the operating system ROM internally in the Aquarius, and is basically an internal mini expander. So taking a little 8910, 32K of RAM, a copy of the Aquarius 2 ROM with the 4K extended basic extension and some extra logic for address decoding, and it would basically be a reproduction of the mini expander design. Yeah, I'd be a lot more careful about port.
You wouldn't get that in. I don't think there's anywhere you can actually plug that in easily, based on the way the system works, because the CPU data bus is not the same as the expansion data bus because of the PLA. So the only place you're going to get that to actually plug in is in PLA 2. And you'd obviously have to provide all the relevant mapping for that.
That was one of the questions that somebody who took a look at the motherboard schematic that I worked up said, well, why is the video data a separate bus from the other? And I said, it's just the way it is. It's brokered by these PLAs.
What I really found interesting when I was doing this was looking at the actual traces, because I stuck the logic analyzer on it, and the weight line for the CPU is 75% active low.
It's the PLA putting a muzzle on it, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But the weight line for the CPU is 75% active low. Now, that doesn't mean the CPU is going to run at a quarter speed. What it means is every time it tries to do a memory access, it's potentially going to have to wait, which makes it very, very difficult to predict at what point it's actually going to do it. So it was very, very interesting looking at the traces of what's actually going on the board. And it's almost as if they designed it with a prayer and a hope. And it worked. So they went with it. Bless them. And the internal RAM, without replacing the video, is virtually impossible to change. You can't increase the size of it because of the way it's so tightly hooked.
Yeah, and the reason they use 2 RAM chips, as I understand it, is so that the video circuitry could scan the character matrix and color matrix in parallel.
Correct.
Because they're stored in the 2 chips side by side.
Yes. Basically the actual memory is interlaced in that memory from 3000 to 3100 is in chip A. 3100 to 3200 is in chip B. 3200 to 3300 is in chip A, and 3300 3400 is in chip B.
So what I've got on the screen here really quickly is again a prototype for a reworked motherboard that I'd spoken of earlier. The Z80 is basically the same footprint. There's no real need to change it. If we start to run out of room, then maybe we'll go to a SODIP version or a chip carrier version of a plastic chip carrier. But note that most of the components are now 0603 based surface mounts. Now I know a lot of people don't really like those. They're still solderable. It's really not my intention that this would be something that somebody would necessarily build themselves. But what I have done is create more of a modern 27 series chip that can be plugged in instead of either the sysrom or character ROM. I'm still working on the character ROM because the mapping's a little bit different, but it'll take a full 512. So the bank pins, while they're not currently connected in this model, you could swap out different versions of the system ROM if you wanted to, S1, S2, whatever you had. Similarly,
I was just going to say, just going to quickly explain there, the sysrom, although it is an 8K ROM, it is in a less than 8K package, as in a 24-pin package, because it uses this hacked ROM format that they used on a few machines like the Commodore, etc., where they used a lower pin depth, i.e. the 24 pin, not the 28, because they used some of the pins that were used on the 24 pins for programming and stuff, whereas normally like the 8K would have required a 28 pin ROM. But anyway. Sure.
I mean, you get a few square millimeters back, you know, you can use that for traces. So it makes sense that they would do that. So that's one of the things that that I'm trying to do. Notice that I kind of unceremoniously put the cassette port and the old printer port over here on this little notch, just because I don't know what I'm going to do them yet. But as a result, I was able to put the USB micro here. This is a 5 to 12 volt. It's 2-directional. This one actually, it'll do plus 12 and minus 12, but the output amps aren't high enough. So I'm going to go with just the 4-pin version, which only does positive 12 that I was talking about. Here is the composite AV mod that I've done in the past, actually integrated on the motherboard now. I've used the area that was originally used for the printer output as that. This port would be, when we get to the point of implementing RGB, would be where this goes, as well as most of the area that was taken up by the RF shield. I've also more clearly delineated the components, and notice that I'm using SOP footprints for the logic chips. These could be condensed into a GAL or something like that, but just for simplicity, I swapped out the components. And again, most of the items are there. Here's Crystal 1, which every machine has. The PAL version has 2. Here's that optional chroma thing, which again, we'd love to find a replacement for. The video chips over here, but I've given a bit more elbow room so that when we do need to expand this out or put the daughter jumper that Mac has been working on for RGB, we can do that. PLA2 or PLA1 and PLA2.
I was going to say, guys, one thing I would like somebody to try, yeah, and maybe it's something you can try, Sean, is if you could knock up a version of the RGB interface and just see, because if I switch my HDMI upscaler to sort of 60 hertz, it works perfectly with this board outputting 60 hertz off the RGB.
So what are you asking again?
Well, if you could try, I mean, do you guys use a HDMI upscaler or what?
I have a frame meister that I could try.
Yeah, and I have one as well too for when I was working on the Commodore. It's not difficult to do. It's just there's no elegant. That's why I was asking Mac about a week ago what DIN plug I should use. I know there's one that I think the Sega Genesis used that was fairly common, but quite honestly, I can't find female versions of those ports anymore. But I'd be up for it. I mean, this is all prototype. So.
Yeah. What I'm just trying to get is does the RGB version work without us needing the TEA on NTSC?
Possibly, but again, until I can get. Yeah.
If you remember, my original board was running at NTSC,
right? Because
of some of the issues that we found with the board, and I had no problems viewing it.
So you're suggesting that if we can get the upscaler into US televisions, modern US televisions,
Yeah.
it'll just automatically sync. Perhaps, I mean, it depends on.
So yeah, you know, let's not worry about having multiple crystals or anything like that. That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah, just have a bog standard Aquarius Plus or whatever this is.
Yeah, the 71509 and jumper for NTSC or PAL and end of day.
Right. And as I was mentioning earlier, since we no longer have the need to switch 3 individual voltages because most of the power components, which are the big parts, this switch doesn't need to be anywhere. And it's actually kind of a difficult switch to source anyway. And that gives a fair amount of elbow room over here. And again, we could put a USB, standard USB port in here, which is just I think, slim enough to fit in. You could perhaps put, I don't know, some other sort of port here if you wanted to. There's some practicalities, and you don't have to hack up the plastic. But here would be where the new power port or the power button would be. It would be a momentary push on with an LED lighted switch. And then we could use perhaps this area for this output port, which is currently the RF output, basically unused for a more standard DIN-based serial out, which could be used for the printer. Now, the cassette, I don't know. I don't want to ditch the cassette entirely. I do realize that a lot of people like that, but perhaps there's a way to make the ports a little more accessible. Maybe we do put a cassette-based phone jack here that has
3.5 mil stereo phone jack will do. For
yeah, tip ring sense. You have actually 4 signals on it that could be used to both control that. Then you could create a fairly standard control thing that would
we only need 3 because there's no control of motor, so we don't need RAM on it. Perfect.
Yeah, I think I remember that when I hacked the cable. So this is it. And except for the one negative 12 volt, which you'll see here coming up, there's plenty of trace room on this board, so these components can actually be compressed together. So there's a lot of air here. There's a lot of air here. All of these chips can be pushed together, so there would be plenty of room for extended RAM, you know, whether it's 32K or 512K bank switched, however you want to do it. There's plenty of room for an AY sound chip. There's not currently any place where we could do some sort of a joystick output port. That's, you know, about 20 pins. Yeah.
If we drop a 95144 in there, we have no decoding logic chips required at all. Everything will be done through that.
So most of these little surface mounts you're saying would go away?
Yeah, correct. Be no need for them.
So there's room for expansion. This is kind of where we're heading. I still have these stupid filter caps. Hopefully, if we do RGB, this can mostly go away. But that's where that one is. Jay, you had mentioned that, and Mac had shown off his. Let me show you what the Rev C of the mini expander board, which is available out there, is. It is retro Aquarius mini expander GitHub. It has already been published. It is still version 1.10, but it is Rev C. The Gerbers are available. So let's open that up and I'll show you.
You're so much more organized than me.
So here is here's the current revision of the mini expander Rev C, which anybody can use. It's got Mac's detailed markings on here, which show the data buses, and address bus shows the 2 ground pins, the 5 volt power, and then here is the expansion of the AY header that exists on the micro expander, which also shows the AY, and these are more like general purpose IO pins. So you can order these if you want to. We also have the breakout things for anybody who wants to do their control pad inputs. I suppose you could map these to Atari joystick if you wanted to, but you wouldn't get, you could bridge the 45 degrees, but you couldn't do the 22.5 degree.
You'd have to use diodes to do anything other than the 4 directions.
Exactly. So this is available for anybody who wants to print it. And again, with this header, you don't necessarily need to find these more expensive DB9 joystick ports if you don't want to. Max, as you saw, got his sitting like an open-faced turkey sandwich on his desk. All you really need is the 3D printed plastic shell. Trim these off, and you've got a nice little expansion system that you can work with.
Did you not see it was actually sitting in the base is the 3D printed?
Yeah, and the 3D printed base is available in an STL file. It's a bit of a challenge to print because it does need some support structures on the bottom, but 3 or 4 hours and you'll have a little base. I don't have the top because it's really difficult to model those little trap doors, and quite honestly, not a lot of people who are going to be doing this would need that top anyway. But those are out there for anybody who wants to play with them.
Great.
All right, so we're coming up on about 20 minutes left. Did anybody who I didn't call on want to show off anything? Roy, did you want to show off your?
I certainly can. I certainly can. Because the camera probably won't pick it up very well. If you can hand over the sharing, I'll throw a picture up of it as well. But excuse me, a bit of a sore throat today. So a while ago, so I've been searching for one of these for probably since I was 10. No, that's not true.
Same time as everyone, Roy. Same time as everyone.
True, mate. But in fairness, I probably didn't even know it existed when I was 10.
Am I the only one who has absolutely no desire to have an Aquarius 2 other than to try and reverse engineer it?
No,
yes.
we wanted an Aquarius 2 because it was fucking cool. Pardon the language.
So here, so even though I've got over 100 machines in my collection, this is my prized possession.
Most expensive?
That I've paid. Yeah, it's maybe not worth the most. Although
I didn't say worth, I said most expensive.
that I've paid, absolutely. Yeah. What's that? I can't even see that sticker, so I don't want to read it. And let me just show a better picture of what she looks like. So some people didn't even know that the Aquarius 2 existed. The ones that do
or believe.
Yeah. So hopefully you can see that. So this all happened when Mattel decided to hand the reins back to Radofin. And they were looking to increase the saleability of the Aquarius because obviously, as we all know, it dropped like a stone. It on the market for 4 months or so. But rather than it being an Aquarius 2 as it's badged, it's really only maybe, I'll be generous, it's probably an Aquarius 1.5.
No.
Because all they really did was add this lovely keyboard. I don't know if you can hear that. It's much better than the original. I suspect Sean's going to go and show off his blue masterpiece in a second, is he? Is that what I was gonna?
I can't see that from the picture. Does it have the keywords?
It does.
On the keys?
It does. Yeah, you can't see it from my picture there, but let me try and.
Okay, yeah, I can see it from that. Yes.
Yeah. So they are there. They are there. Okay. And so what was different with this? Well, they sold it as coming with 20K RAM, but all they really did was, as you can see here, was slap in a bog standard 16K RAM pack onto it and sold it with that. Its reset button is now on the side. That's about it. The ports are almost exactly the same, although you'll notice that there's no power supply because they did eventually use this rather stupid connector.
It's the TI connector.
It is. It's the TI-99, or I think my Spectra Video 318 uses it as well.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I have a 3D print for it. I told you just to buy the cable though.
Slightly different. But the Aquarius is still using, so it's still using the 18 and 9 volt variants on these pins. The problem I've got with this,
they're AC this time rather than DC.
They're AC. Yeah, that's a good point to make. They are AC, so so it's not, yeah, so it's potentially a problem to get a power supply for it. Now, let me see if this will let me change the photo. Let me just move you guys out of the way. Stick you over there. Okay, so that's how it looks compared to the normal Aquarius. So size-wise, it's not. It's is slightly bigger. The newer keyboard is a lot nicer. The other difference is, of course, it comes with extended BASIC as part of the ROM. So you get those lovely extended commands from BASIC that you had to plug a cartridge in or use a query card.
And that's something I'm still waiting on, Roy, because I want to see how that's done. Because I reckon that extended BASIC is externally accessible rather than internally accessible.
You could be right, because I'm juggling a couple of hardware projects at the minute, and all I've really done with my Aquarius 2 so far is give her a good clean and have a look under the bonnet. So she's in a bit of a state. I do have replacement caps, which I have actually replaced them. I've just not given you an updated picture yet. So those two big guys, I've actually replaced them now. I've got the little 220 I've still got to do.
Yeah. Looking at that immediately says to me that the top ROM, just to the right of that resistor bank, is probably the extended.
You could be right. You could be right. I'm happy to share any high-res photos that anybody wants, by the way. I've got no issue doing that. I'm hoping to get her up and running very soon. What I will probably do, because I don't have a power supply that was the Mattel one. I do have, of course, is a TI-99 power supply. Mm-hmm. So the pinouts are slightly different, but it is 18 and 9 and it is AC. So what I'm probably going to do is just rewire the connector inside the Aquarius here to match the pinouts of the
we discussed
TI.
it at the time, didn't we?
Yeah. So I'll just rewire those to match the TI, and that should give her the power I need. And that'll give me an idea of what sort of state she's in when I attempt to boot her up.
Looking at that, it almost looks to me as if, do you know what? They never even considered the US.
No, I can see this. I can see the place.
Oh, no. 2 crystals. Oh, that's interesting. They've actually got trimmers on the crystals for this one.
Well, I mean, so the empty pads there, are where you would have those 2 additional
chips.
Yeah, those 2 chips that the NTSC uses. So I can see it's all there.
Yeah, I'm just looking for where's the 7404.
7404 is just to the right of the RF modulator.
Where?
Right there.
That's the TEA.
It's the TEA.
Where's the 7404?
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
because there are 2 extra chips on the
an ITIL.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it's that lonely one between the.
No, because there's two extra chips required for the NTSC PAL.
Right.
There's nowhere on there for the 7404. Anyway, it's one of those.
I'll share better pictures. So you're saying that there's just no NTSC then? It's just.
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
It seems like there's spots for the components that are needed for NTSC, but obviously it's a European.
It's like they've got see the blank pads by the cap just behind the cassette port.
Mm-hmm.
They would potentially be used for 2 chips that were used for NTSC, right? But on the PAL version, there was also a 7404. Unless the 7404 is just above that cap and it's actually in situ, a bit like that board we looked at from David.
Right.
It was in situ, but not in use.
Yeah.
That's possible. That's possible. I mean, it's going to be a big day when I power her on just to see what sort of state she's in. So I was hoping to have done it by now, to be honest, but I've got an XD sorcerer that's being a right pain in the arse. So I want to get her finished before I make a start on the Aquarius.
Yeah, the Aquarius 2 ROM, which I think Martin might have provided me with the dump of that I have. It's basically the 8K OS, which is exactly the same as S2 in the original Aquarius, no differences. And the 4K extended basic is, I think, feature-wise exactly the same as the cartridge version that was released for the original Aquarius. It was
Correct.
just, you know, built to run from a different location. And in fact, what I've done is I took that 4K extended basic ROM and I built a custom cartridge. I dropped a picture of it into the chat, a very hastily executed cartridge with that ROM image, which I partially scrambled for the to make it work through the PLA on the original Aquarius, and I actually got that to work on Aquarius 1 S2 machines. And it actually works on the S1 machine as well without the scrambling. So yeah, I wish they, as you said, I wish they had done more with the Aquarius 2, because it literally just is the built-in extended basic and the full stroke keyboard, and pretty much the same as the original Aquarius otherwise. Some of the pictures I've seen of some of them have a daughter card. It looks like that was a RGB card for a SCART output. I would have liked to have a closer look at
user supplied. That, from what I've seen of every single one of them, they're variations of what's his name's out of New Zealand.
Bruce.
So, yeah, Bruce.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that was from the factory or if it was added later, but yeah,
they're all Bruce's.
Okay. Your upgrade has probably made that, you know, superfluous then anyway, but yeah, that's and in fact, what I yeah, another project idea of mine. But what I would love to do is actually take that extended basic ROM and include it in my internal mini expander that I talked about, so that you would have the original ROM and extended basic built into the original Aquarius.
Yeah. To be honest, I think what we're going to be looking at, and you know, sort of Jay, you'll probably be involved for this as well, is we're looking at basically taking the original ROM and hacking it to hell, because there's very little uses the ROM as a source of anything, not even any of the games or anything. So, and when you actually look at the code and the way the ROM's written, it's awful. There is, it's almost been written by somebody who's like, I've seen Z80. I'm now an expert. Honestly, that's what it feels like when you look at it. You know, and no disrespect, Roy, you could probably do a better job in your 10-liners of putting random numbers together and producing a game than some of them guys in the blinking ROM.
Yeah, I think that ROM, if my research is correct, the port of Microsoft Basic that was used in the Aquarius, I think that was done by Aztec International, which is the same company that made the RF modulators that they used.
Yeah.
So
I believe it was done to 8080 standards, not Z80 standards.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at the actual ROM, it's only the extension parts of the Microsoft Basic that use the extra registers, the IX registers, etc. Everything that is core to the main ROM uses the standard, what are classed as the 8080 registers. So.
Right, and you're right. I wouldn't be surprised if there was relatively little software out there that actually relied on any of the routines in that ROM.
I can comment on that topic. That Basic looks for me very like Altair Basic, maybe version 3.2. And it was a challenge for my game to implement randomize operator, because there is no randomize there. And I investigated a floating point random generator assembler code in Altair and compared with Aquarius, and found that random number constant. Default seed is the same as there and in all Microsoft basics. And then I thought what to do with that, poke there or do something. I don't remember how I fixed that issue, because I want to generate the same set of levels when I start my game, and it was a challenge. So maybe it is based on 8080 version of Microsoft Basic, and I think that's right. We can write it in a more compact form today.
Sure, I wouldn't mind seeing, as I said before, I wouldn't mind seeing a series of switchable ROMs we could go between. I understand, you know, Basic's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, but there are other things that I would much rather have in memory than necessarily Basic associated with that. So I'd like to see a version of the ROM that has a monitor in it, that still implements all of the components of being able to read and write from either a USB or an SD card. From a development standpoint, that would be much more useful to me. But I think having a switchable system ROM that's, first of all, properly disassembled, and there is one that's out there. I know Mac gave it to me, and it's pretty good. I would love to see the person who had worked on that join the group and talk a little bit about it, because disassembling isn't the same as putting decent labels on the code and segregating the data from the actual opcodes that are in there. So I think that's an opportunity for expansion.
Just Nick, just to say one of the things you may or may not know, the RND statement in the Microsoft Basic, if you use 0 or minus numbers, it precedes the random number generator at a set point. So if you used minus, say,
I know, yes. If I pass -1, then it resets the number generator.
Yeah,
and that is how I solved that problem in my recent game. But before that, I investigated the problem and came to its roots in Altair Basic.
Well, I was going to say, it's one of those, it's something that it's not documented anywhere, but that's how it works.
You find it by accident. I mean, I found it by absolute accident, because I inadvertently put a minus number in when I was doing an R&D one.
I actually, sadly, I knew that, and 0 gives you the same number.
The same, yes. The 0 repeats the previous random number.
And minus resets the generator to whatever number you've set it at.
0 gives you the same number when you tell it to actually print the output out. When you're expecting it to randomize every time and get the same result, you start thinking, what's going on? How is that random?
It's one of those, and you know, yes, because there is under the Aquarius, there is no randomize function, which under most systems you would do basically X equals RND timer.
Yeah.
Which doesn't exist on the Aquarius. But
anyway. Random number generation is a huge topic. A lot of those early systems, they used very simple pseudo-random number generators. A lot of them were based on polynomial counters, among other things. And they have the property of being reversible. So in other words, if you execute it forward, you get a pseudo-random value. And then when you execute it backward, you can get back to the previous number.
Yeah.
And some video game designers were able to use that creatively. I remember David Crane, who was one of the founders of Activision and was the programmer of Pitfall. He discussed being able to creatively use the counter to programmatically generate the levels or the screens that you see in Pitfall. And coming up with interesting layouts was basically a matter of coming up with creative ways of seeding the pseudo-random number generator so that it would produce interesting sequences.
That were consistent every time.
That were consistent, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you say, Mac, on modern systems, an easy way to go is just to use the same pseudo-random number generator, only you would seed it with the value from the system clock, which is a 32-bit integer, and that isn't a cryptographically strong way of generating random numbers. It will do well enough for most things, but you can't even do that on the Aquarius because there's no timer.
You can if you read the R register.
Yes.
Which is random enough. It's only 0 to 127, but do you know what? It's going to produce a seed that is at least 127. And if you read it, sort of with 2 intervals, then you can basically seed somewhere in the 65,000 seed point. That is pretty random.
Yeah.
Still a pain though.
Yep, still a pain for people writing 10-line games.
Exactly. Well, because you're not allowed to do that.
I know. Which is why Nick's game is awesome. Mine's a little bit more simplistic, but drawing these cave walls. Spy Hunter. Stop it! That bloody tune. It's not Spy Hunter. It's Cave Navigator.
Cave Navigator, aka Spy Hunter.
Bumpus Hunter. Yeah.
But
all right, well, we're about out of time.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, getting back to the built-in ROM, one issue that does occur to me is that if you were to change the ROM and change the locations of the callable routines, things like printing strings to the screen, for example, if other software was to use that and those vectors are no longer there, it would cause a problem with the software.
Right.
And one example that I can think of is the Aquarius card. And this was probably a mistake of mine in retrospect, but one of the things I did there was to use the built-in print routines to display
RSTs or
I'm sorry?
The RSTs or actual hard-coded routines.
Yeah, and I use some of those in the Aquarius card for things like the manual viewers, because the way that those work is it's pages of text which are distributed across multiple banks in a ROM, because some of the manuals were too big to fit into a single bank. So what I ended up doing is just storing them as flat strings, more or less. And because all of the executable code had to fit into the built-in RAM, including the code that handled the bank switching, the little bit of trampoline code that handled that, I wanted to keep that as small as possible. So I decided to reuse the ROM routines to do that. And I designed the data to work with those routines. What I really should have done in retrospect was come up with some very lightweight run length encoding format to add a bit of compression. And it wouldn't have increased the code size all that much. And it would have liberated me from relying on the ROM, because if you were to change the ROM, it would probably break the original Aquarius card. I'm going to have to fix that with my new version, I think.
Well, I was going to say, to be honest though, Jay, assuming that S1 and S2 happen to work the same then for the routines you've used.
Yes, they're in the same location.
I mean, we would never change any of the RST routines, which sort of RST 0 through 56, because they are set in stone across the entire ROM. But there will be routines that potentially addresses could change. But if we know stuff that is being called, they can always be hard coded as call addresses. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, you could preserve the vectors so that the entry points are the same.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be a way of guaranteeing compatibility with old software. Although, I mean, there really isn't much of it, but what there is, you don't want to break if you can help it. So,
well, exactly, we don't want to break anything.
Yeah.
But obviously, we can always have a sort of mode A, mode B, which is mode A, perfect compatibility. Mode B, if you want to run the old stuff, because for example, running anything in the query cart isn't going to require any of the new functionality.
Right.
So it wouldn't actually make any difference if we ran it with the old ROM.
Mm. Right. For that matter, I mean, if we're talking about switching ROMs, whether it's manually bank switching using the address pins or whatever, for that matter, you could create no ROM and sideload data through that same set of pins, lose everything, and then just write pure, Z80 machine code and use the stuff yourself. You could reuse all of that for RAM if you wanted to. You could create some sort of
yeah. In other words, we could actually make
wedge,
a proper without actually hacking the PLAs. We can't make a proper system that is designed for CPM, because we can't give 64K RAM space, but we can make it close. But if we hack the
get busy, Mac.
I know.
All right. Well, I hate to be the guy who opens the door and says y'all got to go home, but we have reached 3 hours. It went by really quick this time. So a couple of closing notes. Somebody mentioned the rock paper scissors. I would love to see that developer, whatever her name was, come back to the forum.
I actually speak to her quite a lot.
Well, she joined us.
Yeah, she did, but she's not on Facebook. She's not on Facebook anymore.
Oh, she quit Facebook.
And I did actually invite her today, but she said she was too busy.
Okay. Yeah, we need to see more developers. We are.
Yeah, I've been talking to her as well.
Did you go like that, or like that, or like that when you invited her? Well, that's why she didn't join.
Yeah, I've been talking to her via email as well. She was still debugging rock, paper, scissors. The last time I talked to her, she found a last-minute bug because I was talking to her about doing a cartridge version. And I'd still be happy to do that if she decides it's ready, but she told me to hold off.
I thought she'd done a BL Basic.
Yeah, I tried BL Basic, but the problem is that her program, I think it uses a little bit of inline assembly, and I don't think that was relocatable. What I was going to do is just do it manually, write a little bit of code that copied the her basic code into the built-in RAM because it was small enough to fit, and then just execute it from RAM.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So my point is make sure we can. Sorry, go ahead, Roy.
I was going to say I'm trying to help her along. I'm pointing her in the right directions rather than giving her solutions to code issues because she's eager to learn. Good. So rather than saying, oh, you need to do this, I just point her in the right direction. She's actually redesigned the interface to be more of a portrait than it was landscape originally. But she's doing it as part of a uni thing. So she's doing all the presentation issues. So she's doing the manual and the box design, the game itself. So it's actually quite a large spectrum of stuff she's doing.
And she did just share not too long ago. She shared an updated video showing the interface, and she's been, I think, sort of active on Reddit asking questions about fonts. So I think she's designing things. And
she is. Yeah, I just got an update of her manual earlier today.
So hang on, look, have we got another forum here? Because I know myself and Sean tend to look at Atari Edge and Facebook. Is like Reddit or something relevant?
Well, that's where I stumbled into her, and then that's what got me into Aquarius in the first place. So I owe her everything that has come out of this. But you know, there's communities on Reddit. There's retro gaming and retro battle stations, and that every now and then Aquarius does pop up as a conversation. It's not like there's actually an Aquarius subreddit, but there's nothing there. There's like been one post in 5 years, but it's still it's every now and then it's worth searching there and just checking it out, I guess.
To be honest, I've never ever looked at Reddit. I don't even know what it is. Well, I know what it is. I've just never ever looked into that. It's too hipster for me.
Me too.
Yeah, Atari Age is sort of expanding. I mean, it obviously started as an Atari-centric forum, but there are sub-forums there now for all kinds of vintage platforms, including the Intellivision, which was beneficial to the Aquarius because even though relatively few people are necessarily focused on the Aquarius, there was enough expertise floating around that I was able to tap in and get some assistance when I was doing the Aquara card.
They're very harsh there, though, aren't they, Jay?
I'm sorry?
They're very harsh, as in, sort of, you're very, very unlikely to get replies to anything
Well, it depends on what you're asking and who you're talking to. I'm one of the moderators there as well.
I know you are.
Yeah, so I'm on there all the time anyway, just watching over things. So it's a convenient place for me. Plus, I have issues with modern social media, which have kept me away from Facebook and the like. Atari Age is as close as I can get. So
And I forgot.
So Snagellen ain't happening.
I don't know. I just can't.
On Reddit last month, I think it was on New Year's Eve, I actually submitted an Aquarius Retro Battle Stations entry on Reddit, where we just had to play music. So I played Jingle Bells and then played some with the the actual sound chip, and I won 3 Zilog stickers or something that they sent me. So that was cool.
Wow.
Well, if I'd have known about it, I'd have entered mine.
Your demo?
Yeah. And hopefully I'd have won.
Yeah, well, and it was the contest. It was just music, just sound from any old device, and so. But
well,
yeah,
again, I'd have won.
Yeah, you probably would have.
And do you know, actually, that's something I've been planning on adding to the basic that I'm working on, is a play command. You know, I'm sure all of you have used the Sinclair Spectrum 128 that has that play command that allows you to basically play notes to the the AY chip.
AY, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm actually planning on adding that as one of my extra commands, because why not?
Yeah. It would have what, 7 values if you include
Well, no, you can do play A dollar size, comma B dollar size, comma C dollar signs. So you could play probably 30K given expansion of music. And it would play it,
Will it write it out as a PT3 though?
How do you right? I'm my daughter's expert at this, but I'm going to try the Peppa Pig eyes.
Maybe it is easier to disassemble MS6 basic and get ideas for play statement from there, because MS6 machines also have AY sound chip, and they have play statement with all these features.
As does the Spectrum 128. It has the same chip, so hence why. Obviously, MSX is something. Do you know? I always wanted.
But MSX has a Microsoft Basic like Aquarius, and Spectrum
but when you start writing your own basic commands, it sort of becomes moot.
I think you should spell them all weird just because you can. It's not the play command; it's the fdud command.
The fdud command, and all notes have to start from ZXCV. If you want to play the DECCG from Close Encounters, it's actually VBN XC.
Oh.
Just for the hell of it. But yeah.
Alrighty, so we've gone a bit in the weeds, which is fine. For everybody who's watching this, go out, promote the platform. Aquarius, Aquarilite, and certainly Virtual Aquarius, and hopefully James's upcoming Aquame or AQWX that he's working on.
AQWX or Aqua.
will help people to kind of dip their toe in the water. They don't need to know that they need to know that they don't necessarily need to have hardware to enjoy the platform. That'll hopefully serve as a gateway drug to putting new developers in the fold. And again, we are a lot of Caucasian, middle-aged men-ish. I'd love to see certainly younger developers. Jay, you've got students who could be interested, people of different faiths, different colors, because I think that'll just enrich the platform and surprise us all in new ways. So with that, we'll close it up for this time, and hopefully we'll see you all again in about 3 months.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and catch you in a few months.
Okay.
And let's hope everything we're discussing finally gets to fruition.
Yes.
I'm sure it all will.
Well, having a date is very useful because that gives me a deadline that I have to stick to. It's a great motivator.
Oh,
Right.
you do realize we're recording this and we've got you now.
And make fingers crossed for our 10-liners.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
please
it'll-
support our ten-liners. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Brilliant.
I suppose
The third place this year.
for me, it's one of those I can say, look, missus, I've got a date. What do you mean you've got a date?
Right now, it's looking like probably May 22nd.
Fair enough. Take your word for it.
Yeah.
I doubt we'll be doing anything by then anyway, those of us in the UK.
Oh,
True.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think life ain't going to change that much by then. Yeah. So, all
Okay.
right. Well, guys,
Cheers,
great
everyone.
meeting you all again. And, great to see some new faces. Hey, the scene, it's growing. Finally.
Yes.
I think I picked a good. See, when I got into it again, and I had no clue if there was even a scene of any kind to it. So it's pretty cool that everything's sort of happening at the same time now. So.
Yeah, and now you find there's a group of sort of, well, enthusiasts, for want of a better word. All righty. Well, anyway, thanks guys. Been great.
Bye, everyone.
Yes. Thank you.
Have a great evening, morning, afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are. And catch you next time.
Yep. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.